Okay, welcome to the Village Board of Trustees Work Session for May 14th, 2025. It is 5:02. Clerk Perillo, will you please confirm the presence of a quorum?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Mayor Shepro?
Present.
Thank you. Trustee Giuliano?
Here.
Thank you. Trustee Laux? Present. Thank you. Trustee Hill?
Here.
Thank you. Trustee Ugrinsky?
Present.
Thank you. Attorney Moran and Treasurer Gathgar are with us as well.
Okay, good to see everybody. Okay, will we all stand, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a new flag over there. What? It's a collection.
Yeah.
We just pledged allegiance to it. All right, so tonight we have two exciting presentations, and our first presentation will start with a student from Port Jefferson High School, Madison Testa. Madison wrote to this Board of Trustees. Come on up, Madison. And anyone else you'd like to bring up with you to talk about it, or just yourself? It's up to you.
Just right here? Is that
Yep.
yeah. All right. Hi, I'm Madison Testa, 17 years old from Port Jefferson High School. If you didn't know me.
Here, we need to give you a microphone. Why don't you come up and sit down and just have a conversation with us? This is kind of a more informal than the,
Okay.
all right?
Hi, my name's Madison Testa. I'm 17 years old from Port Jefferson High School. I just want to say thank you to letting me come here and talk today. It really means a lot to me. I recently created a nonprofit organization called the Unmuted Initiative, which has a purpose of raising awareness for sexual violence among specifically young women. And the way we fundraise, we put on specifically what we're calling benefit concerts, which feature young talented musicians that play either a short solo or a chamber music, which is basically like a group of people. And especially recently, the statistics show why this is very relevant. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 26 men in the U.S. experience attempted or completed rape in their lifetime. And specifically in Suffolk County, this is definitely an increasing issue. Over 600 sexual offense cases were reported in 2023, which is very recent. And we're currently looking for support from the village, meaning an official recognition of the Unmuted Initiative as a community partner, event support including permits and public space use, and also joint programming to promote safe and inclusive spaces. You can contact us by email, which is unmutedinitiative@gmail.com, and or on Instagram and Facebook, which are @unmutedinitiative. And yeah, that's it. Any questions for me?
Tell us about the concert that you are planning to.
Yeah, so we're planning on doing a couple of them, but the first one is June 6th. We just scheduled it. It's at the Port Jeff Village Center at 7 p.m. And basically, we are raising money by allowing like individual young musicians to each perform a piece or something meaningful, especially to the cause. And we're doing this also by incorporating like musicians the musicians that created these pieces initially will most be women and like people that are less viewed in that industry, which I think is important as well. Yeah.
And will there be a charge to attend the concert?
No, it's free admission. There would probably be like a suggested donation,
Mhm.
if anything, but really
And mostly it's raising awareness about this
yes.
topic.
We're really trying to get the cause out there. So
Mhm.
yeah.
So how you listed a couple of ways. All the trustees see this email, correct? And you listed a few ways which the village could participate, lend a hand, get involved, can help you raise awareness for this. We met recently with our newsletter writer, and we are preparing our next issue of our newsletter, which will come out towards the 4th week of May. So, which would give us an opportunity to help you promote this through our newsletter. And we'll probably ask the writer to get in touch with you, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
And I know that we'll brainstorm other ideas to help promote this, but I think that's one of the key things we can do. We can also promote it on social.
Yeah.
Is it you and other Port Jefferson high school students, or you and other
Yeah, other young musicians like around Suffolk County would be
that you
doing it.
play with
Yeah.
in
And
that
like,
you
I
know
do-
through your
Yeah, I do a lot of orchestras and stuff like that. It's just people from
Mhm.
so. Yeah.
Okay. So if it's all right with you, we'll provide your contact information to this writer,
Yeah, absolutely.
and maybe we'll send a photographer out to take a photo or do something. Or if you have a picture that you'd like to share with us of something relevant, you playing or with some of the other folks that are going to be performing as well. It doesn't have to be set up. It could be an existing photo, but I'm not sure if anybody else has any ideas about how you thought the village would like to get involved. I just wanted to. I thought your letter was extremely brave and thoughtful, and thought we could do whatever we can do to support you.
Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate that.
I think it's a fantastic cause. I congratulate you for, I think it's on. Congratulate you for the initiative and everything, and wish you a lot of luck. And any other way that you could think of that the village can help out, be more than willing to help.
Yeah, I have some other ideas that I want to run by you, but let's take that offline. I know an author who has written a book specifically on this topic, and through networking, maybe you can generate greater awareness. Right. Okay.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
So we'll be in touch, and things might occur to us as you leading up to the actual concert. So we'll continue to stay in touch with you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Very happy that you guys let me talk and share all of this today. I'm happy that I'm getting the resources that I need. So.
Yep. Thanks for taking the initiative. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up, we have a presentation from Andy Freeling and Dan Gross of our planning department. And it's called Storefront Vacancy and Market Report. And Andy and Dan presented this at the last Economic Opportunity Task Force meeting, or bid. Was it bid or both? They were both there. Come on up, both of you. Or are you going to present from here? All right. And this is something that I had asked Andy to start working on a few months back. And the task force also emphasized they would be very interested in seeing this. It is a look at a real data crunch on what kind of storefronts are, what does our marketplace look like in reality? And Parker Moore, who also, he's an intern for the department, got involved with this. He helped Dan and Andy put this together. Dan and Parker actually walked the community to, they had an idea of what storefronts were open, but they walked the community to eyeball the, the reality and what they were seeing, so they could have the exact data of what they were looking at. And I was floored by the presentation, so I asked them to come and present it to us. This is kind of, we've talked about this, I've talked about this before, about how we need some real verified, qualified, quantified analytics on what our village looks like from a economic business development standpoint, so that we could provide tools for our commercial real estate folks to see what's needed in the village and what's missing. And this is part one, I think, to that, to reaching that end goal. So I'll turn it over to Dan and Andy.
Thank you, Mayor, Board of Trustees, viewers. As the Mayor did indicate, I wanted to share with you tonight some of the working document information that we have in the Department of Building and Planning that we've been developing with and for the Economic Opportunity Task Force for evaluating and eventually creating a public interactive tool that will assist us in marketing and filling vacant storefronts in the village. We've been working on this for some time. It is still a working document. It is not complete, but we did want to show it to the ETOF and get some Economic Development Task Force and get some input from them, and we did want to share it with the Board of Trustees to let you know what we're working on. Dan, as you know, is recent to the department. He comes to us from upstate New York, and Dan was working on some projects upstate New York, which he'll talk about tonight, that kind of ties this all together and can show you what the vision for the work that we're doing will result in. So I'm going to turn it over to Dan then, and take it away.
Thank you very much. Just gonna pull it up real quick, 'cause it took a minute to. Never had that. 1 second. All right. Yeah, well, good evening, everyone, and thank you again for this opportunity, obviously, to be here to present some, exciting work that we've been working on the last couple of months. To kind of jump in right here, what we kind of just to summarize what we've been doing, like Andy has said. So over the last couple of months, really, initially started with our planning aide Parker, who's been here for a long time, helping to. We've been gathering data about all the different locations of parcel data from all the buildings. Apologies, the commercial buildings within both the C1 district and the C2 district, right, the main commercial centers of the village, taking that data and going out doing field studies to kind of understand kind of not only those vacancy trends of kind of like what's currently occupied, what's vacant, kind of putting numbers to the face of what you kind of see every day, but also using that as a tool to kind of leverage potential informed policy decisions and market tools going forward through a tool we use called ArcGIS Pro, which is ArcGIS Business Analyst. It's an analytical tool that we'll dive a little bit more into later in the presentation, but really helps us to turn this, what we visually saw, into some achievable potential goals to move forward with. So to kind of summarize where we've been focusing on, obviously everyone knows the C1, the downtown district, the C2, our South Village district. Now the study areas for this are a bit unique in terms of specifically with more of the C2 district, where we did expand it then a little bit past the actual zoning district. So our goal with this was trying to capture not only the actual district itself and what it contains, but also those who might actually use the space. So capture more residents living in the area, capture more of businesses that might have interconnections between what's currently within those districts. So you'll notice that there, this dark shadow is kind of what our main study area was. And some of this is RM zoning, PO zoning, and a little bit mixed in there just to kind of try to capture that data. And downtown, it's a similar kind of thing, but the only thing we introduced there was also the waterfront to see if some of the businesses that are there kind of introduce any additional data to what we might have found. So in terms of what, like we talked about, our main methodology for this was obviously going out and surveying each property individually, walking the streets to see not necessarily what buildings were vacant, but really the storefronts themselves. So what commercially used properties and sites were potentially not occupied through visual indicators or through data that we were able to pull on our own end. The other part of this, though, as I mentioned before, was using that ArcGIS Business Analyst tool to kind of summarize those main areas and use things such as the United States Census, the American Community Survey, the Economic Census, and Esri's own data tools to kind of understand current market trends in those areas, and then also potential market demand between a period of 2024 and 2029, highlighting potential growth opportunities within those districts. So we're beginning with that storefront vacancy assessment. The results were kind of what you may expect, but a little bit surprising in certain areas. So with the C1 district, or downtown area, we counted 74 storefronts overall, 67 of those which were currently occupied or being used, and only about 7 of which were vacant. So it's about a 9% vacancy rate, which for us is pretty good. It shows that a majority of those properties, yeah.
Just for the audience, can we define C1 and C2?
Like the zoning district? Yeah, oh, you want me to?
I can do that. Essentially, the C1 and the C2 are commercial business districts in the village of Port Jefferson. We have a dumbbell-shaped pattern of our commercial business districts. We have one in the South Village part, or the upper hills of Port Jefferson, and then we have the C2 district, which is the other commercial business district down by the harbor. I'm sorry, it's the other way around. C1's down by the harbor, C2's in South Village. The main difference between the C1 and the C2, both allow mixed-use buildings along Main Street and in the village. The C2 district allows a fourth floor in exchange for a major public benefit, and that is not in the C1 district downtown. That's the major difference, I think, between the two districts. They both are commercial business districts, and they both allow an assortment of typical commercial uses.
Thank you, Andy. So yeah, I guess jumping right in there. So then now we, kind of turn the page a bit with our South Village, that C2 district. Things are obviously a lot different there. We reserved about only 48 storefronts compared to the 74. For the downtown district, 22 of those of which were vacant. So it ends up being a vacancy rate of about 46%, compared again to the 9% for the downtown district. So on an initial basis, kind of what that, we really observed was, as you kind of expect with downtown, the majority of storefronts were showing, high level of occupancy. They're showing active space being used. There was, people walking around using those spaces. There weren't notable signs of vacancies within the downtown district, especially because like where they were they're almost like individual spots, kind of individually isolated here and there throughout the district. But overall, it kind of a different picture of, everything being used and that typical active market you expect. The one thing we'll note is obviously where vacancies were present, you do tend to notice them. You'll see a big blank space between them, some of the buildings there, but again, there was not a trend that we could really pick up. When we go to the C2 district, the South Village, we did notice storefront vacancies were more significant, with approximately half of those spaces, or a little less than half, being unoccupied or not being used at the moment. Those tended to be concentrated where we did note those, like some along Main Street, North Country Road. We did seem to notice those patterns of some strips of vacancies. But on top of that, there were some also isolated issues and isolated vacancies in other parts of the district. So again, this is not saying that the whole district vacant and it's not being used space. It just shows more of a noticeable pattern that residents, visitors, and potential business owners or those looking to invest in the area might notice when they first come to the village. So, yeah.
Thank you for that explanation. Just trying to understand so like the One North building where the bank is moving in, but I don't think they're there yet. Is that vacant or not vacant under your categorization?
So we counted those as not vacant,
Okay.
just because we know they're going to be used very soon. They're still
Sure.
being filled in the space. So yeah. For this study, we counted those as non-vacant.
Okay.
We have to keep that low-hanging fruit to add up to the.
Yeah, to try to help out a little bit.
I was going to say you could have done it the reverse way, is count it as not vacant or
Yeah.
vacant, and then you've already improved.
Yeah, true. But yeah, so our real goal with this too is kind of now, this almost sets like our baseline, right? Understanding what the current, kind of the tenants hold, what's currently being used, what the spaces are open, and where there's potential trends. The next part of this was really diving into what we have is that business analyst tool. Like I said, pulls data from a wide range of sources to try to not only give you details and insights into your current market rate, but also that potential growth. So starting this off, we'll start with the C1, our downtown district. One of the cool things that ArcGIS Business Analyst produces is almost this demographic report that kind of summarizes the different population groups in the area, the different businesses and economic activity, and also expenditures. So like what residents or current users of the space are spending their income on. So beginning with downtown, what we noticed was unique to the district was that we did notice it was a bit of a, it had a much lower population in terms of residents who is currently actively using the area. And as you know, the C2 district, which is the South Village, it's a lot more of those mixed-use, larger scale developments. So more people living in that space, where downtown, it's more rentals here and there, but not as concentrated as you would imagine. But overall, we had smaller house household sizes. There was a higher income level in terms of median household income throughout the district. And the other thing that we found was pretty interesting was in terms of the actual population spread for age. We noticed that a majority were kind of in that young professional kind of base. It was about 69%, which, Esri comes up with their own term. They call this urban chic space, but that's kind of dominated the space. And then the remainder was about 30% of the 55 and older group. So as you notice, there's a bit of a polarity there and also a bigger concentration there, which you'll notice when we get to the C2, it's kind of a different story. And the only thing on top of that from this report is in terms of the expenditures, we notice there's more expenditures on like travel, on entertainment, on restaurant businesses, those kind of more recreational activities, which is something you might expect given the character of the district. So now
Sorry, and this, if you go back
Yeah, go
one
back.
slide, this is just for what's actually in C1. So like I live a block off of C1, but my household's not counted in this analysis, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more than 320 that are like walking or accessible to, just for clarity for everyone out there.
No, yeah.
There's more than 320 possible customers for any future business that wants to be down there.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that. And that's the point. And that's the thing too, is hopefully we're hoping like we did with the C2 district to kind of expand this eventually to include some of those areas. So then we can kind of get a better understanding of, what's going on and what might interact with this district as well. This is the one we conducted more recently. We actually did the C2 one, I believe, at the initial part of it and kind of expanded that as we went along. But to jump into some of the stuff, so the numbers here, obviously there's a lot of charts and
Can we go back to that?
Yeah, of course.
To Kyle's point, because we could benefit from a little clarification. So we're talking about the numbers, the median age, population, average household, and average household size and median household income. Are those all the above retail apartment unit, mixed-use apartment units, and also the multi-family apartment units that are downtown? And so would you consider some of the houses along East Main Street in the commercial? They're in the commercial district, so they're kind
Yeah.
of considered.
yeah, so those would all be considered as part of that population.
And it would be interesting to see how far that district goes. Like, where does C1 end and R1 or R2 begin? On a map. Just curious to see that.
Yeah.
Not right now, but it'd be
Okay.
good to.
I was just
clarify.
saying, I can also pull this. I have a copy of the zoning map on here too, and I can pull
Okay.
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah. Pull it up.
You'll put. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. One sec. Back to USB. Oh. Well, I'll try to zoom in on it. See if it lets me. Oh yeah, it's a little tight. Okay, I'll try to hold on. I don't know if it'll let me zoom in from here. Oh, it will. Yeah, so it's not the clearest, so we'll probably have to get a little better one, but
Okay. Well, that's a good part of it to enhance the presentation. It would be nice to see that.
yeah,
okay.
I'll add that in.
Not today. Again, not today.
No, I understand, I know. And you want to jump in?
Just for folks who are not familiar with zoning maps, the C1 Commercial Business District is most of the red that you see there. That is all in the Commercial Business District. We also included the Marine Waterfront District, which is the green, just on top of the red. And then we have our zoning districts, the RB districts, that are in the shades of brown that surround the Commercial Business District. The study that we did focused mostly on the red and the green and left out the single-family homes for now.
Thank you. Yeah. All right. So I'll jump right back into where we were. Oh, okay. All right. So, okay, so here we were. So the way business analyst kind of works is that once you submit an area, and Esri runs their data reports, and you run it through the system. It produces a series of Excel sheets, like big, large charts that kind of show, break down the types of businesses and industries by very specific codes. There's the NIAX codes are kind of the industry standard to identify different business classes in the district, but there's also SIC codes, and there's other things that they use to try to analyze this data. But what they produce for you is this large data set that it is useful, especially if, like, you know, as a potential marketing tool, so investors could see kind of what's going on and what those market analysis trends really are. But for us, it's something that we can kind of use to make into a producible product, to kind of, you know, present kind of what's going on in the district and that potential demand growth. So this is just super early stuff, just because, again, a lot of this, it's really preliminary results, and we just started polling and going through the data. But one of the unique things about downtown, so I guess starting with this, the pie chart here, is that something that was unique to the area was that we did notice that there wasn't one dominant industry throughout the district. Now, you notice all this stuff in gray. That's actually all the other classifications of codes available. I think there's over 1,500 available in the NIAX code, so obviously we don't want to include all of that, but it showed that it was unique in the sense that it wasn't like one type of industry or one type of service was really dominating the industry overall. There was a wide range of active uses and active spaces kind of throughout the district, which is something that's unique in kind of showing that active character that we come to know for downtown. Now, the one cool thing about business analysts is, again, like I said before, it not only shows you your current market and demand, but also the projected growth. And the table on the right here, it's a little hard to see, but it does show some of those growth demands in terms of expenditures per year. So, for example, for like food services, it has currently about $3 million being spent throughout the district through the year, I guess by residents and those using the space on food, where by 2029 it has projected about $3.4 million. So it's, you know, over $400,000 increased potential growth there. But what was unique about this, and the next slide will summarize it a bit more, is that while these do show the broad characteristics, when you begin to break it down and look at those subcategories of like what the actual different specific types of industries are, the potential needs and the potential growth opportunities for each district, they align in certain areas, but they're a bit more unique than what you would expect. So if I jump to the next slide, it's more of a summarizing paragraph to kind of talk about everything we found, but what we notice is that obviously, as this indicates, you have a healthy, well-rounded economy in that downtown district. We noticed that in terms of that potential growth from the 2024 to 2029, it included those typical things you would expect. So, you know, things in the lifestyle category, dining, entertainment, those restaurant industries, kind of what's currently there. It did show that there was growth opportunities still available within those areas despite the low vacancy rate. But what was significant was that in terms of the largest growth what we saw, it was actually in food services for local residents and everyday goods, so such as like grocery stores or personal care services like barbershops and things of that nature. There was a bit more growth than we initially expected in the downtown area, maybe showing that there's always been this focus, maybe that tourist economy or maybe the visitors and what's going on, but there's also a good opportunity to begin investing in the residents as well, available throughout the district. So obviously there's a lot more to unpack too, and there's a lot of complications involved with all this analysis, but it's just something that we took away preliminarily as we continue to sort through this data that we found unique to demonstrate. And I guess before jumping in, does anyone have any questions before we go to the South Village part, or keep going? Yeah? All right. So now we're going to the South Village, our C2 district, and we get a bit of a different story. So in terms of residents, again, households, it shows a much larger population immediately within that district. It has a much larger household size, meaning potentially more families or more different types of groups living in the district overall. The one thing that was kind of unique about this is that unlike the C1 district, the C2 and the South Village showed a lot more of a wider, broad range of age ranges throughout the district. So they include, from young professionals to kind of the middle-aged groups to a smaller but still significant older population throughout the area. And you kind of see that through the pyramid. It's a lot more spread out. If you put it side by side with the C1 district, it's not as bipolar as what we saw there. So looking at the actual results and the market findings, so just to, I guess, initially start off, The one thing you'll notice, and it's kind of dominant about the area, is when we get into the actual types business summary, what's currently there. Healthcare, as you might expect, was the dominant industry. You know, about 37% of all businesses, active businesses being used in the district, were healthcare and social assistance related. In terms of employees, I believe the numbers were just above 50% of employees with the area are also working in that industry, and showing kind of the potential dominant, nature it has in the district at the moment. But, on top of that, there was also, a big portion of what they had, like the professional, scientific, and tech services. Retail was also still significant enough at 9%, where it was compared to 11% in the C1 district. And then they had a lot of other services, about 12%. So other amenities and services and personal care services within the district. So
Dan, how does Mather Hospital fall within the C2 district?
they don't. They're in the PO, professional
PO.
office. They're in the professional office district.
Where does the C2 start from the east side? Is it Main Street? Is it Maple? Is it Elm? Whatever.
Yeah, pretty good. But the one thing I would note too is that this C2 is also that expanded study area. So this also included some of the PO and some of the RM that's within the district. So a lot of these, I think the PO is a lot of those,
Okay.
what's it called? The potential medical professions there.
Right. Like the medical office buildings
But yeah.
on North Country Road and Oakland.
So it shows at the intersection right here with Stony Hill Road is kind of where. Yeah, I can zoom in. See if it lets me.
So it's hard to see. Just share the mic with you.
Yeah.
It's a little hard to see, but the C2 district in the South Village is the off red to the right where the cursor is now. The study area moved east though and included the PO and the Highlands and that area in there up to Columbia. So
Okay.
our study area did include that
Mhm.
to get some of the capture of the spending and things like that.
Okay, that makes sense.
All right. So we'll jump back in. There's a way to view from the. I guess I'll just go back to go through it again. Okay. So yeah, I guess jumping back, where we were, the one thing that was kind of unique too is that again, we put those industries on the side that kind of shows potential market growth for just a couple of industries compared to all the ones we observed. And food services, in a similar manner, was we saw the most substantial potential growth opportunity between 2024 and 2029. I mean, the current demand was about 6.9 million for 2024, and is projected to increase to 7.6 or just under 7.7 million dollars by 2029, showing that there is a potential large market there for growth, and kind of characterizing that transitional phase we're kind of in with the district. One of the unique things here too, and I'll jumping over those findings, was that the food services was similar in terms of what we saw overall between the C1 and the C2. Like, there was a growth potential for entertainment, for dining services, for those typical amenities. But where the C2 really stood out was more of those personal services, things for residents, things for like grocery stores, and it had daily food products and things of that nature, kind of reflecting the residential character of this neighborhood. Like, obviously, I'm not saying the C1, again, not to say the C1 doesn't have that, but just in terms of the actual zoning district itself, the population kind of shows that potential, that need there. But again, coinciding with those high vacancy rates, it kind of all adds into that potential demand structure and kind of what's really expected of, could be a good opportunity to invest in and to grow with going forward. So from here, I guess, you want to, yeah.
So I wanted to jump in here now because what are we going to do with all this information that we're collecting? And we have a vision on what we can do with that, and we want to turn it into something of a product that Dan worked on when he was upstate. So we want to turn this into an interactive piece of software where the public, where developers can look at our vacant inventory and put a lot of this information into a pop-up window when they click on the spot. So we want to make this available to help fill our vacant spaces. We want to use the demand information to inform those who are looking into our interactive product, what we're looking for in those vacant spaces and what the community would support and wants. So why don't you show us that, Dan?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it okay if I hold it up?
No,
Okay.
you may not.
All right. I know I don't want to take too much time.
No, yes, please. We're
Yeah.
here to learn.
Thank you. So yeah, I guess so. Just give you a brief background to what this is. So before, as Andy mentioned, before I came here, I worked even before East Hampton. When I went to graduate school, I was went to Binghamton University, and there I was part of a unique opportunity with the Village of Johnson City, which is right next door, to work on what they had as a neighborhood revitalization project, really for the downtown region there. Now, Johnson City's in a different scenario where it's kind of that post-industrial kind of, what you typically expect from upstate, right? There's usually dominated by major industries in the past. A lot of those have vacated, and they're on this turn of trying to reinvent themselves and reinvest to kind of, push forward into the modern era. Now, a lot of this was funded through New York State. New York State has a lot of upstate revitalization initiatives going on at the moment, and they helped, begin that initial target of investing in Johnson City and what they call the Innovation District, which is kind of summarized downtown district between the university, between local hospitals, to try to generate some potential growth there that was kind of missing for a long time in the region. So what was unique about Binghamton University is that we got brought in, it started in 2016. I went there from 2021 to 2023, and they had us not only serve as conduct further analysis within these communities, right? Going in and really seeing what the character of Johnson City was, what neighborhoods were like, similar to what we just did with the Village of Port Jefferson, and using that data we had to make public services to kind of, for investors or potential, even those in the local community, to kind of understand not only what's going on in the community, but potential how their needs are being addressed, how their concerns are being addressed, and potential growth opportunities there. So a big key strategy to this, and similar to here, was really that whole business investment. They have a long Main Street that was once thriving, had a lot of commercial centers, and a lot of those were vacant spaces by the time we were there and working on it. So, using that similar strategy and some of the data we did, we were able to make a whole series of reports about, the business types in the location, the potential vacancy rates, and make these interactive web page to kind of, for investors and locals to kind of understand what was going on and what they can actually view it. So this is all, again, hosted by Esri, not to keep highlighting them, but it's all hosted by their servers, and this is a summary of what our data was. And this, for example, was showing the business types within the district, and each of these pop-ups show different classifications that we created, and you can click right on it, and you'll get a thing about the business name, the business type, and a whole sales report about the years it was sold, the different the prices it was sold at, the type of business it is, current owners, basically making that information public, which just so potential investors or those can know who to get in contact to, or kind of understand what's currently going on. And so our goal with this is, and we also broke it down again by the types of businesses, and you keep going, and we also then did what we kind of did here and did a whole vacancy report. So this, now the symbology takes a little bit to load, but shows the different addresses throughout Main Street, again, showing different businesses by their classifications of vacant, non-vacant, or we actually identified currently in transition as a separate category. So those were those recently bought that were now not open yet, but coming to fruition. And those had the same kind of thing where you could click on the pop-ups, you can kind of see the different, we actually did this by floor. So we broke it down by floors, if they were mixed use, if they were just single standing structures, what floors were occupied, what floors were vacant. We included images and names of the industries that were there. And again, had sales reports to, so investors and local community members could understand what's going on in their neighborhood. So what was kind of cool about this, and not just, these specific reports that we worked on, but also just the project overall, was that once we started getting this data out there and getting this information to the public, it not only got the interest of like the whole community, right? We had news reports and interested in it, but it also had investors interested. There's been a significant turnaround in downtown Johnson City recently between recent investment again from the university for the medical institutions, but also from local investors where they recently transitioned one of the largest vacant factories in the downtown region to this luxury apartment complex that's something that giving life to it. It's been vacant for I forgot how many years, but a very long time. So it shows kind of where this data could really go and that potential opportunity once you start expanding on it and doing further studies where you can really go with it. And eventually, even for us, they ended up receiving, I think by the end of my second year, we got a $10 million grant from the New York State to further expand and reinvest in the community. So, yeah.
Hey, Dan, question.
Yeah.
So the vacant storefronts, and I can't read that, I didn't bring my distance glasses, but does it say what the business was?
It does.
Okay,
So
so that if somebody so if it was a former restaurant and somebody said, yeah, I want to open a restaurant there, I know there's already a kitchen there and, maybe some of the facilities, so I don't have to do extensive renovations to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and so these like even the color code, it's a little hard to see here, but those color code classifications were basically the type of industry they're most recently used as. So there's a restaurant, retail, other things of that, and even if they were vacant, it'll still, be highlighted.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dan, thank you for that. This is really informative, and I'm a data girl, so I really appreciate the work that went into this.
Speaking of the data, I just wanted to give you a quick look at the spreadsheet to show you what we've put into it and how we're calling up the vacant parcels, and then the ability to create additional columns for information. We've shared this internally with our code office, and they see the ability to add their information to our spreadsheet. And then from there, as you know, we can query the data and put up on our little pop-up windows the type of information that we want, and not put up other information that we have in our back data. So just let Dan pull it up real quick.
Yeah, sure.
Our intern Parker did a lot of this. So he set up the table, did the original site work, and then we went out there and confirmed it. And it's a living product, so we're always out there updating it.
So I have two questions. So Dan, based on the work that you did upstate and having done this project here, like what advice do you have, or what learnings would you be bringing to the village based on what you already know? And then the second question is for Andy, and that is, tell me what the call to action is here. Right? This is a tremendous amount of effort and data, and how do we leverage this to make a difference in Uptown Port, for example?
Yeah. Yeah, of course. So I think one of the first and the biggest things to this is not only us, obviously we have some work to do on our end to revise this data, go out there again, reassess it, and making that format that's really presentable and in that public fashion. Part of that too is getting the software available to create it, and it takes some time to actually get that uploaded and
That sounds like a budget ask, right?
Yeah.
No? Is that what I'm hearing here? Just saying.
We got
No, Stephen? Yeah.
When we shared this with the Economic Opportunity Task Force, the members of the task force were very excited about the product that could be designed and how they could use it, and they saw the possibility of helping the village fund getting the software and the products in that we would need to do this. So yes, it's going to require some investment, but I think that it's possible that the business community, the bid, and the chamber might want to be part of that investment.
And they have budget for this type of
Yeah,
investment.
that was my next question.
Yeah.
To what extent have we involved the Chamber of Commerce in this? Because this
They were
is,
sitting in
I
this
mean,
meeting too.
Yeah.
The Director of Operations and some of the representatives that are on the Chamber of Commerce, members of the Chamber of Commerce were there and listening to it. They're all it's the bid the bid and the task force are well represented on Tuesday, the first Tuesday of every month.
Yeah, but I guess just past that point too, what I would say too is, in terms of actually getting this out there, like the biggest thing that we did is once we had it out here, and it's funny because we didn't really have to, people knew about it. There was news media about it. There was reports coming in because it was, a big deal for Binghamton and Johnson City to be creating this new partnership. And a lot of that was the university too. We put out our own newsletters, and I wasn't on the newsletter staff, but there was students who were putting out newsletters about the different changes going on in the district. But really for us, it was not only getting this information public and in an interactive space so that people could go on and invest it, but it was also talking to the people, like in terms of the business owners, in terms of residents, in terms of, actually understanding what they, obviously everyone will say they know, about the different trends going on and different opportunities there, but we took a lot of time to really get there and interview them and have these key stakeholder interviews to just try to understand what their needs may be and what their concerns may be. And we made that information too. We'd make reports and make that public to try to, again, just not only show that the university's investing in there, but also that we still are doing it with consideration of those living in the space and those there at the moment, and trying to, kind of create a system where it's, I guess it's inclusivity, right, together and pushing it forward. So that was our biggest initiative with that.
One of the challenges that we've seen with Andy's work and the work of the task force, the work of the bid and the chamber is perception of what is happening in the business districts of the village. And there's chatter on the street by the business owners saying we don't have any foot traffic. There's challenges to lack of data, and that is one of the challenges. So when we actually have data, we can start from a position of information, of real information, quantified and qualified, and then we can arm the chamber and the bid and the real estate developers and commercial real estate agents with this information.
Mm-hmm.
There's a step 2 to this that I think is going to take a little bit more of an effort, of a sales effort on the part of our planning department in terms of how do we quantify what customers are actually thinking. I mean, this is great data from the resources that you culled it from, but let's talk to the people. Let's talk to people who are actually the users, the consumers in our district, and where are they from? What zip codes are they coming from? And we've talked about this, is reaching out to Stony Brook, Mather, St. Charles to pull in some quantitative and qualitative data. That's 50,000 people right there that we can pull and get some solid information to build out infographics, to build out more presentations like these that can be road shows. And we can bring in a meeting of developers and commercial real estate folks and say, here's the numbers, here's what we've got. Take it and run with it. The village isn't going to sell real estate or try and get retail storefronts built, but our planning department can help provide the information that will help them bring to the village what will bring more people to the village and help it thrive.
Is it possible that we view this, this initial analysis as a baseline? I mean,
Correct.
The only way to measure progress is by measuring progress against a baseline.
Yep.
And this seems to me to put a stake in the ground for that. I would wonder to what extent the software itself can forecast also trends, because we've got, for example, the Stoller property that's coming up, and that is going to be so incredibly close in proximity to our uptown that it has to be included kind of in the demographics around foot traffic and in terms of what those storefronts can handle, what they should contain, to appeal to a broader audience. I'd be really interested in that. And then back to the conversation of software, I am happy to help with sort of an ROI analysis on the software itself so we can justify spending the money, because it's that is something that I've done maybe 100 times. So if you
Thank you.
need help
Thank
with
you.
that,
Yeah.
We've been.
let me know. But I think this is really important stuff.
What we didn't tell you is that the work that we've been doing on the business analyst tool is actually through Suffolk County. We don't have that tool in-house.
I was wondering how you.
When we started this, and Dan came on board, we started putting together the layers of what do we need. We don't have GIS capability to actually create the maps. So we're starting to put together the need in order to bring this whole initiative in-house. And it would be built on. It wouldn't be all at once. You need a little bit to do this, and then we can keep building on that. But so I think we're on the same page with that.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
Andy, you know, I'm viewing this also through a somewhat self-serving lens because we're trying to put together a forward-looking tax forecast for the next couple of years.
Mhm.
And that kind of capability is going to be helpful, sort of, certainly on the business district side, but to the extent that that intersects with what we're trying to do on the residential
Mhm.
side, that would be very helpful.
Okay. And this, I hear you. This data sheets that we have sheets and sheets and sheets of this kind of data that's up on the screen. The yellow lines indicate what's vacant, but we can add columns to all this information and create the data and then query all the information that we're putting in. So the information that you're looking for, information that other departments might be looking for, we can use this as our base data set and then query out of that the types of things we're looking for. So,
Dan, in the upstate example, did they use that data to perhaps determine the more likely businesses that would be successful in those locations? And did they, by extension, do outreach against that? Or, like, what did they do with the data?
Yeah. So I will say a big part of it was, like I mentioned, that grant application before for that. So a lot of that was for New York State's Upstate Revitalization Initiative. They have these $10 million grants, and they ask for that kind of information about your current demographics, current changes, potential growth in certain areas, or like what you're like you're saying. So what kind of like, what's in the region, what you want to use that money for, and that's what a lot of this data ended up at least going towards. In terms of market analysis and key investments, a lot of it was, or potential businesses. I mean, a lot of it was. I don't want to say we didn't get to that stage yet with the village, because we put the tools on the ground to show the information public. Like, these are current vacancies, these are what's currently occupied. We determined demands both using business analysts, but also talking to residents and what they felt was missing and different things of that nature. But in terms of reaching out, I know there was discussions, especially for them on the housing front, because there was an older housing stockade and there was a really desperate need for affordable housing in the downtown region, which now they've a couple projects have gone underway since, and that was part of it. I know my advisor was talking with them, but that is something I could follow up with them, their staff, as my old former professors and their staff, and see kind of a little bit more insight into that. But yeah,
I was also thinking that maybe this is an opportunity for us to partner with Stony Brook, although I'm not sure Stony Brook has a program that's as robust and specific as Binghamton's master's program that you went through. But there's opportunity for distance learning through and partnering with Binghamton through Stony Brook for students to take Binghamton programs here. And maybe we can somehow try and work that out. That's academic and that'll take a little bit of work, but it seems like to use resources that already exist at the university level to benefit the village, and it gives them a learning opportunity. And now look at the work product that comes out of that. I think it's a success, and I would love to see if we can't try and do something like that too.
thank you.
thank you.
Yeah. All right.
Is that everything?
I think so. That's
Okay.
That's,
Very good.
it's a wrap.
Is this information on our websites now?
Not at the moment, but we do want to, right? We want to make it available we do want to try to make this available for, the public, so we can, so they can, have this data and then just kind of take their crack at, analyzing it. And
Yep. Yes.
Are the PowerPoints on our websites now? Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
can email you as well with all you all as well, just for everything.
Yeah, we'll just get Teresa to put it up on the Building and Planning Department website. And maybe we'll call it something like Economic Opportunity Task Force, Work Products and Planning. I don't know, we'll figure out what to call it, right, Andy? Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Good job, thank you.
And
Thank
if the Finance and Budget Committee wants to take a look at that, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, I think they might have an interest.
Yes.
Abacuses,
Whiteboards.
whiteboards.
Whiteboards. It's always whiteboards. All right. Our next up on our agenda, we are going a little bit out of order. I think we're going to go into executive session, then we'll come back for monthly reports, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so do we have a motion?
Motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll be back. Okay, welcome back. Do we have a motion to come out of executive session?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
At what time, Sylvia?
7:10, Mayor.
Thank you. All right, so we will start with our monthly reports now, all right? And Trustee Giuliano, we'll start with you.
Start with DPW. Is that turned on? Yep. All right, starting with DPW, the branch program. Program began on the west side on March 31st and completed on the east side on April 18th. DPW staff patrolled the village and chip piles that adhered to the program. Residents continued to put out items that were not eligible for pickup, and so letters were sent to these residents advising them as such. Wood chips were brought up to chip it all during the program. Approximately 40 yards of chips were brought up for disposal. Street signage repairs and replacement. They put stop for pedestrian signage back on village crosswalks. You've seen that they put up always this time of year. They moved dangerous intersection sign on the corner of Stony Hill and High Street closer to the intersection. I think we had discussed that at our last meeting. Replaced metered parking signage and updated the times and the rates at all the village lots. From February to the current date, they've used 18 tons of asphalt for various pothole repair, berm installs, and road repairs. So they've been extensively doing as much road work and road repair as they can. Their usual daily tasks and activities: garbage removal daily from the village, emptying the garbage cans, blowing off the walkways, picking roadways, removing roadkill, removing illegal advertising, etc. Street sweeping, cleaning of DPW shops and yards, maintenance and minor repair of heavy-duty equipment to DPW vehicles, and addressing resident phone calls, emails, and work orders. They're continuing to monitor and document East Beach Bluff after all significant weather events. I got one report that they did at the last rain event that noticed some debris on the beach, but other than that, no major damage was done to the bluff on that event. But they are continuing to document it and to report and to make sure that that pictures are taken and archived. Parks report, spring cleanup. They've been doing a lot of, this is their busy time of year. Rocket Ship Park, Joe Erlin Field, Village Center, seeding, fertilizing, trimming, aerating, installing sod all over the village. They brought materials and they re-roofed the pavilion. They brought materials down to the East Beach, removed the rotten, damaged roofing at the pavilion, and re-roofed the pavilion there. They've been adding mulch to the garden beds and flower beds, repaired windscreens at the tennis courts, fencing and the gate at the tennis courts. They were a big asset. They helped tremendously with two events that we had: the Arbor Day celebration at Village Hall and the rededication of the park. And the name just escaped me. Haywood, excuse me. The rededication over there. So they were a big asset in those two events. The council for the Citizens Advisory Council for the erosion. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to go. I know Zena stepped in for me on the May 1st meeting. So I don't have a report for what happened then. Zena advised me gave me an email, but I just got it, so I haven't had a chance really to review it. So that's my report.
Thank you.
Sorry, just a question on DPW. They mentioned that they removed 2 dead trees, which is great, but fine. But is it possible we could work to replace those removed trees?
Yeah, I don't know the locations, but I could find out the exact locations and see if there's something that they can. I'll talk to the tree committee and
It
see
might
what
be
they
routine that they
suggest.
do replace once they remove. I
It
don't
just
know where
didn't
the
mention it
trees
in the
were.
report, so
Right.
maybe they did,
Right.
and that would be great too.
Yeah, I don't
That
think
would be
they.
even better.
I don't think they
actually.
did. I mean, once they remove it, that you can't plant a tree right in its place
Yeah.
right away.
Mhm.
But let me find out the locations. Let me talk to the tree committee and get a recommendation of what kind of trees they would recommend for that location, and see if they can accommodate that.
Great, thank you.
And speaking of the tree committee, and the email, the letter that we got from Kathleen Riley that I forwarded on to you, and regarding the estimates from Daisy White, what's the status of that? Because she's proposing, she would really like to see, so there's funding in the budget, right?
Mm-hmm.
Stephen, I'm going to look at you about this. There are 2 buckets for tree planting every year. One is, not every year, sorry. One is a $25,000 fund that was established by Mather Hospital that we haven't used yet to plant trees with.
Yes, we have that at deferred revenue. Yes.
All right, and the other is a requirement by to be a tree city, there's a requirement to commit to $17,000 of investment into the tree infrastructure or something like that, right?
Yes, and that can be through tree trimming, maintenance, a variety of different sources. Yes.
So that $25,000 has been sitting in that deferred revenue fund for 2 years since I've been here. And we still haven't figured out what to do with it.
Right.
And so Kathleen is, and I'm leaving it sort of in your
Mhm.
court, because we've been asking the tree committee, and Kathleen has a very emphatic recommendation to install green giants or another
Right, the tree committee, yeah.
species to.
Yeah, Kathleen spoke to the tree committee. She came in, as a matter of fact, I met with Kathleen, we walked the area. I suggested she come in and speak with the tree committee, so she came in and spoke to the tree committee. So what the tree committee is doing now, they're just making sure, all right, where exactly are we looking to plant? And they're coming up with a recommendation, maybe the green giants, or maybe there's another recommendation that they can come up with for trees, but they're not saying no to that.
We're going to land on something soon, in other words.
Yes.
Are there any other areas that they wanted to see that money be used for?
Not that they can identify right now, no.
Okay.
They haven't identified any other area yet. I
Okay.
mean, other than spot, here and there, or might need a tree here, taking down a tree, we can put one up, but nothing major.
So I'll just ask if you run that number that Daisy White
Mhm.
provided. I didn't really look at the numbers. But if you could run them past the country club folks,
Yes.
just to get a sense of if that's, because they get trees all the time. They
Mhm.
have their wholesale sources. What Kathleen said is that the rate that she was able to, that Daisy White gave her, it was very comparable to wholesale prices.
Right.
So just want to
Sure.
cross-check that,
Mhm.
and you know, maybe eventually soon, I don't know if this is planting season right now, might be. But that's the other thing, is who's going to plant it and, you know, what's the right season to plant these trees. So those are all considerations, and it should impact the timing that we,
I know the last time we did planting along the train tracks, it was a little involved in that we had to get permission from the railroad, and there was actually classes that they had to take for safety because they are near the tracks and everything, so.
who parks.
Parks, yes.
Mhm.
So I don't know how long those classes are good for, if they have to take those classes again, but so we might be looking at planting season in the fall, not,
Mhm.
we might
Okay.
not
Okay.
be able to do it in the spring.
Okay. All right, Zena.
First of all, I'll just ask Bob, do you want me to recap the email that
Sure.
I sent? Okay,
That would be great, thank you.
yeah. So I'll use my electronic device to aid my memory, if that's all right. Okay, so I did sit in for Bob. Stan was there at the erosion committee meeting. My overarching observation was there is some concern among the committee members about the alignment of their meetings and when new information comes to light that would enable them to move that forward. So that's just an observation. There's a recommendation later on. And then my other observation was that we are very fortunate to have the group that we have, because we've got physicists and people who are actually experienced in some of the topics that are under discussion. I took away a few notes on things that would be that were brought up that are either requests from the group or or sort of came out of those discussions as additional items that would be useful for them. So they would like to explore the potential of working more closely with you and the engineers in terms of information flow. They were also interested in the second FEMA grant for the $3.75 million, whether they could get eyes on the criteria for that, and any documentation around what that requires from the village. They also asked for information relative to Phase 1, a copy of both the RFP and the winning proposal for the Phase 1 work that was done. Again, to help them better inform, sort of the history.
There was no RFP, it was a bid. So
Okay.
the difference is, it was, help me understand, explain the difference between the RFP and a bid.
So in the most layman terms, the RFP is request for proposals, which means that we are not directing the type of work that is being done. We're being given options by the proposer for how they suggest we solve our problem.
Okay.
When we have an RFQ, request for quotations, that means that we already know what needs to be done, or we have a set or fixed item, and we're giving those specifications. And so those are that's the basic differences.
So I guess the rephrasing of that request would then be to receive a copy of the original bid that was accepted? Does that make sense? Am I using the right vernacular then?
The awarded response would be what we
Okay.
want.
That's, please note that.
I see there's people from the commission here now. I'll just ask this question out loud, but I'm not asking anyone from the commission to respond, but the public is generally required to request documents, and I'll look to our village attorney to support this or not, but through FOIL, through the Freedom of Information law. So when and if a request is is made through the clerk. The clerk responds within 5 days, and then within 20 days or so, there is a document produced. Or the document exists on the website. And if the document exists on the website, the clerk would say, document exists on the website, and you can find it here. So in that regard, all these requests should go through the clerk's office.
Okay.
Like trustees don't process FOIL requests.
No, I get that. But I do feel that if we're asking residents to donate their time for a specific purpose that requires information from the village, it seems like introducing the FOIL process to that would be an unnecessary slowing down of their ability to proceed.
I'll just let the village attorney respond to that one.
At the end of the day, they're all residents first, so they could FOIL anything they want at any time. They're also designated through their volunteership, which is absolutely appreciated, serving on various commissions and board, but that doesn't give them unfettered access either. For instance, and I'll just use this example that might not even apply, but it's easier understood. If this board is together in formulating the budget, which is you are fiduciaries first, that is your responsibility, and someone who's on the finance committee wants to see a draft budget before you guys agreed what it should look like in the public, they don't necessarily just get handed that document in draft form because they're on the committee. Now, again, might be a bad example because maybe
Yeah, that's not a good example because we did
Yeah.
and we do because it's part
of your
work,
charge.
Not we.
All right, so let
but-
me change the facts a
Yeah.
little bit.
Right.
This board hasn't decided how to handle yet, as a policy, the bluff. Right?
True.
So for the people on that commission, the erosion committee, to have the information that you guys have as policymakers before you decide what that policy is going to be, to me would be inappropriate and might not even be subject to FOIL and not necessarily information that they should have just yet. And I've noticed this in the past where information that maybe some people have gotten, they're now suggesting the policy to you of what, in contradiction to what this board wants to carry forward. And that's not at the charge of those types of committees. So just because you're on a committee doesn't necessarily mean you have unfettered access, is what I guess is what all I'm trying to say.
I respect that completely, but if it's just background information, it just feels to me as if requesting them to FOIL it when we've asked them to do this work.
Do we know if it's on the website, though? Did anybody look on the website to see if that's on the website?
I did and couldn't find it, but maybe,
I agree wholeheartedly with that. Like, for instance, just going
Yeah.
back to the budget, if we're asking for input from the Budget and Finance Committee on the budget, but they shouldn't have to FOIL the budget. But
I think we're getting into a point of distinction. There are committees and there are committees that are in the code, right? So the Budget and Finance Committee is sworn in. They are expected to at least keep the confidential parts of the conversations surrounding the budget, et cetera, and the thinking behind it, confidential until it's been shared broadly with the public. Let me take a step back. I am merely sharing what I observed and what I heard. And as somebody who is always thinking about how can we be more effective, it just felt like that would be a super easy one to get out of the way. If there's historical stuff that would be useful for them for context, why not just give it to them?
but someone needs to be the arbiter of what that is.
And
'Cause,
that's why we have
'cause-
a trustee liaison for the group, right?
Yeah, so we're going to go to Bob and ask Bob to ask Sylvia for the file on record so that he can give it to the commission? Is that a process that you're suggesting?
No, well, that doesn't sound bad, but, I want to be respectful of what
I mean,
the rules
The clerk's
are,
office is the records office. It's the official records office. Whether or not it needs to be foiled or not, Sylvia is authorized to to be the arbiter of that.
Okay,
Not
and
Bob,
if that's
not
the
me.
information process, then
Trustee Yurginski,
will-
going back to what you said, if it's statutory in the code, right? If
Yeah.
the committee exists in the code, there's a statutory charge, right?
Mhm.
And if it exists in the code, I would agree that if they're following their charge, they should have access to whatever documents they need to fulfill their burden as laid out in the law.
Yeah.
Other committees that aren't statutorily guided should do what you guys ask, not what they want. So if you want them to look at a project, here's the project, look at it. It's not for them to see what you guys see, to make the policy determination of what that project's going to be. Does that make sense?
But they're not making the policy, they're advising us so that we can make the policy.
But I've
There
also
are-
seen from this chair disagreement with what this board wanted to do from certain committee members that's contradictory to what this board hasn't acted yet, and we're getting opinions from committees that aren't statutorily guided, and they want information that you guys have that they shouldn't necessarily have yet, because the public wouldn't get it through FOIL either.
Well, I think I did start by saying there's a little misalignment with the information that the engineers are putting out, because they're still working, right? So, at any rate, let me finish my observations from that meeting. Very simple. Consideration be given to removing coir logs and other debris that's currently on the beach as a result of runoff only, in order to avoid exacerbating erosion when subject to tidal, so it's like bouncing around and causing further damage. And then I will refrain from reading the recommendations in light of the prior conversation. But questions raised, like what is the design life expectancy and intended performance of the lower seawall? That would be sort of engineering information. And what is the planned slope of the bluff following completion of phase 2? Obviously, it sounds like that question can't be answered just yet, but it's being read into the record as something that they would like to see as part of the information when it does come to them. And other than that, we had a brief conversation about the Lessing contract. The primary data point is really, is the turn open to just members or everyone? And it is open to everyone.
We clarified that at the last meeting.
Yeah, but it came
Yeah.
up as part of that meeting, so. And that's,
This was after.
okay, and that concludes my,
So Bob and I attended a meeting on Friday that was with GEI, our standing meeting every 2 weeks, GEI and Haydock, and the Commissioner of Public Works and Parks and I meet with the engineer of record of the project and our consulting engineers to help guide the process. And at Friday's meeting, with an understanding that the Erosion Commission is feeling frustrated that we're seeing reports, Andy wrote in his report, there's a little frustration that they feel like they're not able to do anything because of, they're not being asked to do anything because the information isn't forthcoming. We are working with the engineers on a schedule for what their timeline is. We've asked them to produce that. They produced a draft, which isn't ready for public consumption yet because it's not, we're not sure that it'll be, we have to look at the first objective for this project now, since we approved the value engineering proposal, which was that last meeting too? Yeah. So they need time to create that value engineering plan. They are using the LiDAR survey information and data to develop that plan. Once they develop that plan, they will show it to us. Once we see it, our consulting engineer and whoever else, me, Bob, will ask questions and get it to a point of public presentation or review. And the other thing that I have asked them to do is to, at every sort of milestone step of this process, is to create a fact sheet that describes the project at that current milestone, where it is. Like, for example, and this is going to be an engineering project fact sheet. This is what we did. This is when we did it. This is what's next, XYZ. We can't predict that. We're waiting for information too. So if we don't have information, we can't share information. So if there's other information that the commission wants, put the request in the writing to the clerk. If it doesn't require a FOIL and it's easily accessible, that's the way to go. We're not the records access officer. Sylvia is. So that's what I'm suggesting to the commission to do.
I guess the point I was trying to make, Mayor, is it's for this board to decide the path. And then once the path is decided by this board, then then be appropriate, based on whatever information this board had gathered in meetings and everything else that the different committees might not be privy to say, hey, this is what we're planning on doing. What is your input on this plan? Not for anyone else to review or attempt to review the data that this board's reviewing to come up with their own plan. That's kind of where my head's at with that. So once this board develops the plan, right, based on the like I said, being privy to meetings and certain things, then that's a document or a plan of how we're going to move forward. To me, that's why those types of committees exist, to be like, all right, this is the intent of the board, what do you think? Not, we would come to a different opinion if given the same facts, because otherwise just run for trustee. So, we shouldn't have 9, 10, 15 trustees. We should have this many. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. It's not an attempt to usurp or diminish roles, because they're very, very important to have other eyes on it. But you guys are the elected officials to develop the strategies. And then you ask your committees to weigh in on those plans. And if they make suggestions of recommendations of how to do it maybe a little differently, a little better, you vet those with your engineer, and ultimately you come up with a final solution. But it's not to be, I don't think it's appropriate to them to try, or any committee to try and sit in your seat to decide whether or not they agree. It should be, here's what we've decided. Do you agree, or would you make other suggestions? That's just, this village has a lot of committees, more than most. And I think that's equally important to have public input as much as you can get it, but that's what it is. It's input and recommendation unless it's statutorily guided. So.
And this commission, I will say, and I've said it every single time, has been extremely helpful in their input, their questions, and challenging, some of the engineers.
It feels to me as if much of this could just be taken off the table if there's better, communication.
Well, let me just address that for a second.
Okay.
The last meeting, Bob was not available, and I was not available. So that's the day my father died. And that day, I had fully intended to go to that meeting and update that board, right? And I had information. I didn't have everything, but I had information that I provided to you about Lessings.
Yes.
And I don't know if you went through that information with them, but I answered every single question that they presented. So I'm not sure if those questions were responded to at that meeting. Those were great questions. Great questions. So the other aspect of this, and Bob sits in the engineering meetings as well, is the commission asked for, hey, are we going to do a structural evaluation of the building? We think it's a good idea. So GEI has put together a proposal for a structural evaluation of the building that is right now hovering around $60,000 for the engineering review. And that's not all. That's not all. Okay, so we had our first discussion going through that proposal, and GEI, Hayduck asked some really significant questions. So to offer up that proposal to anybody for review before our consulting engineer looked at it and asked informed and reasoned questions would have been premature, still premature. GEI had to go back to the drawing board. So the process is working, but it's a process.
Sure.
It's not just add water. That's how we got here. Stupid. Anyway, we are working diligently, and if something happens in our personal lives where we're not available to communicate something to the commission, that's going to happen. And I understand it's frustrating, but we're waiting too. And we rely on and appreciate their dedication and their questions. So we follow through on the things that they ask us for. This is an update that just happened on Friday. So even if with the structural evaluation, even if we did attend that meeting, we wouldn't have had that information. So we're happy to have these discussions at these work sessions, which is the best place to have them.
Okay.
What else do you have?
So I will now proceed to the finance portion of my presentation. Okay, so as you guys know, we are 17 days away from our new fiscal year. So just want to update you as far as, where we stand. It is normal practice to kind of start running reports and seeing, where are we in terms of monies that have not been spent, to have that dollar amount, to then also anticipate the fact that people will be continuing to put in expenses that relate to the current fiscal year. And but we do anticipate there being a slight surplus that we can use to sort of kickstart our contingency fund for next year. So there will be a couple of bucks that are moving into the next year, and we'll start that baseline going. We've and the group has done some work in terms of expense evaluations. So, area by area, they're starting to go through contracts and sort of find, things that have just been languishing that haven't been addressed, where we will start seeing some savings, which is good. And the one thing I don't have an update on is how is the inputting going for the budget by month into Edmunds? I meant to ask you about that earlier.
So, been able to create basically a dual spreadsheet where we can copy a formula to split it up over 12 months, each expense category over 12 months. So that's step one. And then step two is actually going in and then trying to quickly figure out which lines that doesn't apply to. Like an office supply line would be split 12, I'm not going to use historical data on that. The best way to do that is, we have an even amount each month, and that's the budget for that. Because you can get really complicated if you try and do that every single line item. Payroll is always the same, 26 payrolls every, and then So we have some of that data. It's already started to be populated. It's done for the country club fund because it's easier. There's less lines, there's less categories. A little harder for general fund, and then the general fund's more complicated. I have to go through for insurance and various software and stuff like that. So it's ongoing. It's being worked on. Unfortunately, myself, I lost some time here, so I'm trying to play catch up myself
Yeah.
as fast as humanly possible to get that back on track. I still anticipate having the month-by-month data be able to be uploaded into the software on time.
Yeah, because you've already got the template.
Have the
built,
template.
right? Yeah.
Just need to get it
Okay.
populated.
Good. So, great. Would love to sort of walk through which lines are trending and which lines are flat, and so just evenly spread. Okay. And that is kind of where we stand on the finance side.
Okay. Is our budget up on the website?
Finished getting it scanned in and over to the clerk and sent it to our digital team to get it uploaded to the website. I haven't checked to see if it was done yet. I have gotten confirmation that it was done, but it was sent today.
Today?
Yeah, it was
Okay.
finished late yesterday, and then I had to rescan it because the first scan looked wonky, so I had to fix it. We want a nice PDF on the website.
Yes. Okay, good.
Legible.
Trustee Laux.
Okay, I have nothing in my report that we had to foil. From the Recreation Department, we, in preparation for our summer camps, we've had quite a few tests done. We had our drinking water tested. We had our fire alarms examined. The elevator was checked out, and the HVAC systems up at the village center all checked out. Our fire alarms and fire extinguishers.
Alarms.
Okay. Lifeguard and counseling positions are all filled. We're one of the fortunate people. I know the shortage of lifeguards are around the county, but we have our staff completely filled. During the month of April, we had 6,851 visitors come through the village center. Many of them were there for the arts and crafts show that was there, and not as many as we would have liked. Attendance wasn't as good this year as it was last year. We're still running free senior citizen programs every Wednesday and Thursday from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. They're pretty well attended. The summer parks and recreation brochure that I think we all got a peek at one or two meetings ago, it's been posted on the website, all 55 pages of the brochure. This brochure will give you a complete look at the entire recreation program, days, times, how to register. The department, under the guidance of Renee Lemmerman, this brochure is excellent. They did a great job in putting this together. There are lifeguard orientation programs scheduled for Saturday, June 21st for the East Beach staff, and on Saturday, June 28th for the West Beach staff. Those are on-site. They're mandatory meetings for the lifeguards and those counselors that'll be working those beaches. The men's adult softball league started on April 14th. The women's league started last night. Both leagues could use some additional players, so if any of you people want to play softball, you can contact Renee at the center. The farmers market right now, we have an excess of 30 vendors signed up for the summer season. That's pretty close to capacity. Going over to the country club, The golf course was closed Monday and Tuesday this week for the aeration of all of our tee boxes and greens. We opened this morning, and the course is in great shape. I played 9 holes, and it turned out pretty nice. The aeration was pretty successful. Thanks to Pat and Jeff, the entire crew. This is a mammoth job to do 18 holes and do the complete course in a 2-day period, and we're doing it all in-house now. We're not bringing in any outside service to do this project. This Friday evening, there's a welcome back party up at the restaurant section of the main building. This event's going to run from 4 to 7 o'clock in the evening. It's for members plus 1 guest per member. Those wishing to attend, they should RSVP. As of this afternoon, there were 132 that had responded. In terms of our numbers of members, the last I heard, I tried to get it from Danielle today, but she left early for some reason. 522 members. Maybe Stephen has a bigger number than that.
As of the last report, I had 537
Beautiful.
members, and I'm hoping to have, by Friday, I'll have another updated report, which I'll make sure is sent out.
550 is the magic number.
That's for memberships sold. We're at 500 memberships sold. We need to be at about 600 people. Right. So we're getting closer. We're about around 30 memberships short of our
Did
target.
you join?
No. What's the difference between people and members?
Couples.
Oh,
Couples.
couples are one, okay.
Right.
Family.
So,
You've
Right.
also got some couple of corporations.
and a couple corporate members, yeah. So that makes a little bit of a difference in the terms of the number of bodies versus total sold memberships.
Going back to the restaurant, I know many residents are concerned about the restaurant situation, and I can assure you that we're very much aware of that, and we're working on that situation. We're meeting with Lessings. We're discussing potential schedules of social events. Mostly will be on Friday evening, but we're pushing for Wednesday evenings also. As we proceed with this, we're going to keep the residents informed. I can totally understand your concerns. We ask for your patience because we're new. It's fairly new. We're, about a month into it, a little maybe over a month. We would like to see it open more also, and we're working towards that. I want to say a few words about also the Board of Governors up at the club. A lot of people are concerned about the Board of Governors. There was no meeting in May. There is going to be a meeting in June 16th. The Board of Governors has put out a request for committee members. It went out through the country club mailing. That June 16th meeting is going to be focused on those committees, those different committees that we formed up there. It'll be at 4 o'clock. And basically, that meeting is for that purpose only, to talk about the committees being formed and who will be on what committees. There will be a meeting schedule formed going forward. That meeting schedule will be publicized. Some of our meetings will be open, other ones will not be open. when we're
Wait,
discussing.
Why would they not
what do you
be
mean by
open?
that?
Well, for example, the 16th, if you want to come, it's, you're not going to be able to participate in the 16th meeting.
They're work sessions.
It's a work session meeting.
But people can
You
go if
want
they
to
want
come
to.
and sit and listen, yes, but there'll be no participation. Like the folks back here tonight, lots of patience back there. But going down the road, there will be a scheduled set of meetings. It may not be every month. It may be every other month, but it will be posted in plenty of time so that people will know when the meeting is, and they will be able to come to those meetings. The fire department has an outing up there Monday, I believe. Yes, this Monday, up to Country Club. We are full, totally sold out. I have one other thing that I would question or talk to the board about. I would love to get these bylaws in place somehow soon so that we have more guidelines for our Board of Governors. Right now, we're still operating without bylaws. If we can do something to get this thing moving. That's all I have to report.
Stan, who has pen on the bylaws at this point?
I have a draft version that I'm reviewing.
The other thing we want to do is engage, so bylaws are the Tuesday group has bylaws. Did you see those?
Yes.
Yeah, they came out, and they're sharp, they're intact,
Yeah.
and they update them every year.
Yep.
And these bylaws for the Board of Governors
I have
is,
them right here.
Mayor, what is the Tuesday group?
it's the league that plays on Tuesdays. It's a
Okay.
tournament group. And they manage their board and create minutes, and they have bylaws, and they run like a top. So,
They've been updated maybe 12 times with the
And-
date on
and
the,
it's dated every
Dated right
time
on
they
there.
are updated, it's dated when it was last updated. So they take it pretty seriously. So, governance, I sent that, club benchmarking email out yesterday, to Board of Governors, President, Vice President, and to you, Stan.
Yep,
And it's a webinar on governance and golf club governance.
Yep.
And it's not a simple matter. So Stan did a great job drafting these bylaws. We need a legal evaluation of them, and then, but I think our board, and I would hope that the board would have shared that webinar invite with its board, with the whole board. Because it's not intuitive, especially with a complex organizational structure as ours. It's unique. So I'm going to tune in. It's tomorrow at like 3:30, 3 o'clock, something like
3
that.
o'clock, I think it is.
So I know I'm going to learn from it. Okay. Is that good? Are you good?
I'm good.
All right.
For
I
now.
also wanted just to mention that the trailer that was behind DPW is now relocated to the beach. So the recreation program is going to use that for shelter and air conditioning and appropriate lighting and resource for beach camp and the lifeguards and the staff down there. So they're going to have a nice place to chill on their breaks and get out of the weather, get out of the elements, and also have a desk to work at, kind of thing. So it was good. I was happy to see that. And our revenue, Stephen, for the country club, Are we on track year over year?
Based on the projections that I see, we're going to get pretty close to our target for the revenue that we projected for this year. So it's going to be weather dependent, but we're doing well. I had a note here. We're up on guest fees. The pro shop is up. I think we're on target to hit our cart fee number. So if the weather holds out, I think we'll do pretty good, and we should hit our number. And then on the expense side, it's going to be very close. It's going to be a very neutral budget. We're going to be very close on both. And that was to be expected when we cut the budget back, when we knew we weren't going to hit our revenue for membership.
And then I saw a note from Larry today about the online ordering through the Pro Shop system, and that's close to being finalized,
Yes.
since people like to order their,
I think that's going to be a big step forward. We have such a small pro shop and a small inventory where you can order something that you want and we can get it. It's online and it'll be shipped right to your doorstep. The billing will come through. They take a percentage, of course, but it gives us a tremendous inventory of apparel.
we're
that
not
we
reliant
couldn't-
on shipping
we
and
couldn't, right,
to us. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Um,
So that was Larry's, right? Larry found that resource? That
Yep.
was good. Okay, Trustee Hill.
Thank you. So in April, there were 464 parking tickets issued, and that's compared to 345 in April 2024. So I think we've mentioned a few times that enforcement is improving and on a up trajectory. So it's a pretty crystal clear example of that. So thank you. 2 notices of violation were issued to businesses for code violations, 15 alleged code violations in the process of an investigation, and then 12 other calls for service received either through the phone, online complaints, or when folks were out on patrol. They've onboarded 11 new code enforcement officers, which I don't think I've ever onboarded more. I think I've onboarded 2 employees at once, and that was a lot. So 11 is a lot more than that. So thank you for all the hard work that goes into that. And then our new uniform should be rolled out by the end of May, if not sooner. So that's also very exciting. And then the AED Machines Village is the public access AED program. They were checked and the pads were replaced at the golf course pro shop and at Village Hall because the pads expired, the machines kind of last forever. And then an issue that Supervisor Cooper brought up to me earlier in the week was that there were, I think it was over the weekend, there was issues with dogs in Rocket Ship Park, but it apparently is not in our code to explicitly prohibit dogs from being in that park, and then I think possibly other places as well. So if there's no objection from this board, I'll work with Kevin in updating the code to make that official. And then if there's other spots that you all are thinking that we should wrap up into that, please let me know.
All dogs welcome. Except there
except
was a
in Rocket Ship
point,
Park.
except Rocket Ship Park, right? So because it's so crowded, I don't know. What do dogs do in Rocket Ship Park?
I mean, it's
They-
for kids, right? Like
they poop.
They go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
It's not. It's not.
Yeah.
Not built
Yeah,
for that.
and the
Yeah,
kids are
it's not-
running
it's not what
around
it's
in bare
for.
feet and
Yeah.
socks and things like that. So it's kind of unsanitary. Yeah, it's a good idea.
I have a question on the, we always include the speed summary reporting. I was just wondering, not to put you on the spot in this meeting, but maybe in future meetings, sort of, if there's any observations or a call to action, again, like what does that tell us we should be doing? If there's anything differently,
Yeah,
maybe not now. You don't have to answer that now because I know.
No,
Probably
there
wasn't on
wasn't
your
really
roadmap.
anything too notable in these last ones. So like the one at North Country Road, the speed limit's 30, the average speed was 36. That's pretty much in line with what we have. There weren't any serious speed spikes. I think I've mentioned it when there's like a 65 or a 70 or something like that, but there just weren't any in those reports. Now, one of the discussions we did have with DPW is just like all of our speed signs are out and about, so we might want to have a conversation of, is there anywhere else that has a higher priority need, especially given that we have some of the data here, but the other argument is, well, maybe the speed sign's working, so leave it there.
True,
So
true.
like,
Yeah.
it's kind of, and then the question is, do we want more of them? They are not cheap. I had conversations with Jared about it. I
So
think,
is it, how much
I think it was $10,000 for two.
for two?
So,
We can ask Lisa to look into grants for
yeah, I
something
think
like
that's
that.
probably the route to take.
Because I've gotten a number of people on East Broadway saying speeding's a problem on that street.
Speeding is a problem on every
It's
Yeah,
everywhere.
street.
It really is. So,
And Scraggy Hill Road, where
Mhm.
there are,
Yeah.
15
Yeah.
mile an hour. I think it's a good idea to speak with Casey, Officer Berry and Officer John, to see if we might be able to get some special detail hiding, somewhere up on Scraggy, so they're not that visible, because when they are there, they tell the residents, well, this is no problem, and they're like, well, you're sitting right there, so
Right.
of course they're gonna slow down.
Right.
So it's like sort of trap the drivers, because I'm hearing horrible reports, and it's obviously it's a school zone, so something's got to be done. Those speed bumps help, but they don't help. Those stop signs, people just blow right through them. So that should be something that we talk to the precinct about.
We should come up with movable speed bumps.
Yeah, we could trick
Right.
trick speed bumps. Yeah. What else? You want to talk a little bit about the BB gun incident?
yeah, that communication's out, right?
Not yet, no.
Oh, okay.
Mm-mm.
All right, I'll do my best to
Just very
remember
brief. Just very
the.
brief. I mean, I can do it. We can dialogue about it if
Sure.
you want to.
Yeah.
We got a report of an alleged BB gun assault on East Main Street, I think, or Main Street, and the police were called, code was called, and a report was taken, and then it happened again, and this time there was a license plate identification, and the victim did not want to press charges. So there was no ability to move forward with any kind of enforcement. And then our code officer spotted the license plate of the vehicle that was alleged to be the vehicle that was had the alleged responsible parties in the car, and it was parked in a parking lot off Mariners Way, and the code enforcement officers saw BB guns in the back seat. So the code enforcement officer called 911. So Suffolk County Police were responding, and at that time, the operators of the vehicle returned to the vehicle. They stuck around until the police arrived, and they were interviewed, and the parents of the people who were operating the vehicle came down and were horrified and said, this will never happen again. And so, again, no charges were pressed, so there was no pursuit of any kind of enforcement of that alleged. Yep. So we followed up with it. Our code enforcement worked with Suffolk County Police to identify the owner of the vehicle. And the most important thing, you can mention this, because you added it to the statement about what people should do and what they should do, what they say they should do. So you want to add that?
Yeah, I'll just say, if you are the victim or witness to another BB gun shooting, please do call 911. Also, if you have been a victim or witness to a BB gun shooting and you've not reported it to the village or Suffolk County Police, please do that too, because at this point, the village, from our standpoint as village government, we've done everything that we can on this subject, and it would be really bad if another incident happens, especially because previous victims did not want to press charges. So I think that's kind of a little bit of a frustrating fizzle to this story.
Yeah. Everybody has their reasons, but it's helpful to prevent it from happening again if the people who are responsible or allegedly responsible are adjudicated, I guess. So just wanted to report that. And just remind everybody that social media is not an effective measure to report something to 911 or code. And code will respond. Code will call 911, but it's more direct. Code's a middleman to the 911 initiative. And we have that. Do we want to talk about that today or the?
Sure, yeah, we've been talking about the who to call document. I think it's the final one now. So I'll share it with the council, the Public Safety Advisory Council, and then we're good to hit send, upload, share, all the above.
Okay.
Can I take a peek at it before it gets uploaded?
Good idea.
Yes.
Thanks.
Okay. My report. First, I just want to acknowledge everyone sitting around this table and many people in this room for your kind expressions of condolence for the loss of my father. The village poured out. There was an outpouring of condolence and support. The staff here at Village Hall, amazing. In the Village Center, at the Country Club, every single faction was represented. So DPW, Parks. So I just want to express the gratitude to the village here, the village operations, and also the community. So it's very meaningful, and the family was very, very appreciative. I will just go through quickly some of the highlights from the building and planning report. The first thing I want to do is correct the last item on that report, which is Andy's summary of the Citizens Commission on Erosion. I think he misinterpreted something, and it was corrected today. It's not corrected on this report, but it will be corrected on the report going into the record. That it stated that the chair declared the commission's role in the Bluff project review to be near complete, and there was no discussion to that regard. So Andy acknowledged that to the chair and has subsequently adjusted his report to reflect that. So just some highlights. I think the Building and Planning Department has taken some steps to start really listening to project ideas before officially taking them to the point of the planning board review process. So there's applications, there's pre-applications, and there's meetings and conversations that lead to applications. And I think what he's doing with this process is he's being extremely transparent and open, doing this in a public meeting where it's recorded, live streamed, and available for future review. And it really gives the developers an opportunity and the investors an opportunity to understand what they need to do prior to putting in an application. So there are a couple of properties that met with the planning board at their April meeting, And the planning board gave some really significant feedback. Like, okay, if you do this, you're going to have to request a variance. We suggest you do it this way because if you do it that way, it's not really clear if you're going to get what you want. So the planning board knows the code, the planner knows the code, and it gives it's sort of like, so there was an applicant who came before the planning board and then zoning board and just continued to make their case for a variance to be able to build on a very steep slope on Belterre Road. And the feedback they were getting was very negative, but they continued to pursue it because they have a right to do so. So the ZBA ultimately, it ultimately resulted in a ZBA unanimously voting that they would not approve a variance request for that project. Process done. Fait accompli, right? That's what they're there for. Maybe not.
Till the appeal.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Which if they do, that, you know, so yeah.
Also, they're right.
Yes, also they're right, but that doesn't mean that it'll prevail, right? So, there are a couple of projects that were presented at the planning board, and I think I applaud this process. I don't interject myself into the process. I don't think any of us do. We listen to it, we hear it, we see what's going on, and then if it comes before us, then we get involved. If there's a point where it needs to come before us, we listen to the advice of counsel and we make determinations as to how we hear it.
By law, Mayor, those boards are autonomous by nature and apolitical.
And yeah, so we respect that. So all that said, there were a couple of multifamily residential projects presented over the past 2 months for discussion with the planning board, pre-application, here's what we're thinking, this is what we're doing. And then there was also a discussion about the Arden Place building, to consider whether they would be able to build a hotel of 4 stories in the C1 commercial district, which we listened to Andy Freeling present today, and what he said was the C2 has C2 has an option for considering 4 stories if there was a substantial benefit to the community. Again, something that we hear, we allow our planning department and our planning board to adjudicate, to listen, respond, provide feedback, ask questions, et cetera, get it to the next step, if there is one. So the Gap building and the 2 mixed-use 4-story apartment complexes that have been discussed. These notes will be on the website. Planning board minutes will be on the website when they're approved by the planning board at the next meeting. So the public is certainly welcome to watch those recorded meetings and also review the minutes from the planning board and zoning board of appeals meetings. I also wanted to mention that we got a notification a few months ago from the DEC requesting to evaluate our national flood plan insurance, and which they do every 10 or 12 years. Anytime, and I'm going to preface this by saying this is a joke, anytime they want to come down for lunch in the village, you know, they come down and they evaluate our flood plan. No, this flood plan insurance program is significant. And Sylvia, I'm going to ask you to kind of weigh in on this because I'm kind of familiar with it. I asked about it. What does it cover? I think it covers downtown buildings from flood damage, right? So is the Village Center part of that? Chandlery? Village Hall? But is it all downtown or is it DPW? I'm sorry to put you on the spot. We got that answer and it's flown out of my mind. But in any case, the meeting went well. Our engineering consultant for environmental engineering was present for the meeting, and Andy Freeling responded to the questions and took the meeting with the 3 DEC representatives, and they got all 5-star review for the plan. Immediately, yeah, they're very happy. So that's when the DEC is very happy, we're very happy. As I mentioned, the ZBA did not approve the Nor Complex application on Belterre Road. And I guess that is really all I have. Grants. We're working with, again, dishes. There are, I don't know, are those meetings weekly with Jared and Lisa on the August flooding issues? And we're getting ready to start moving forward on some of the projects that are coming out of that. And we're getting down to the point where we're going to start moving money to pay for them. We already did last month approve the treasurer to start the process for borrowing against it.
Yes, we,
Okay.
the board approved the 4 bond resolutions, and
Mhm.
the clerk has noticed, and
And those were, being that we're speaking about as part of my report, those were properly noticed. I'm sorry. Those were properly noticed as required in the newspaper and also posted in 6 conspicuous places throughout the village, including our website, which would make it the 7th.
I didn't see them. No, I see them. They're hanging all over the board when you walk in.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's one of the spots, yes.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's all I have for now. So who wants to go next? Dave Moran?
Okay.
Okay.
Just a couple of things for the board's edification. In meeting with Andy Freeling and to discuss possible code amendments, he was asking for code amendments to authorize the planning board to grant parking variances. And implement the ability based at the planning board level with the input from the planners, and parking stall demand reduction formulas that other municipalities are using. It's certainly something we can do to give the planning board that authority. Once we started looking a little further into it and the research, it's kind of contradictory to the whole purpose of having a PLOP, a payment in lieu of parking, as well. So as it stands right now, if you wanted a parking variance, you can go to the Board of Zoning Appeals to vary from the code. The likelihood of success of that is very slim based on, one, the precedential effect of ZBA grants. And most of our properties being similarly situated that would be requesting those grants. Basically, at a zoning board of appeals level, if you grant one, you better have a very good reason not to grant the next one. And so the likelihood of success at that level, and proven by the history, that not many parking variances, if any, are ever granted at the zoning board level. So when we got into it and we had further discussions with Andy, do we really want to give the ability of the planning board, let's say you have a commercial center that you own, which requires 70 spots. So the applicant always has the availability to present to the planning board that we've made accommodations for our parking. For instance, our business is opens at 5 p.m. and the building next door closes at 4:30, so we made an agreement for parking over there. We can get 30 spots there, and that thing, which reduces their PLOP number, right? They could also technically can go to the Board of Zoning Appeals, but most people do not because they are familiar with that outcome. So when we talked about giving that authority to the planning board, and the idea of using parking stall demand reduction with at least two other municipalities are using, it seemed counterproductive to our PILOP. So the conversations led down a path of why do we have this issue with not being able to fill vacant stores because of parking problems? The McDonald's building being one example. Because it's not cost effective, specifically to mom and pop type operations, to have to pay for 15, 20 parking spots at $4,000 a spot, or whatever the prior board agreed a PILOP should cost. There was also, in further research, determined that there was a code at one time that gave a 200-foot radius around structures, that if your building touched that 200-foot radius and it was municipal parking, you can count those spots as well. So I guess the root of the idea of the story is we should kind of consider what we want to do parking-wise, whether it's amend the PILOP, because my conversations with Mr. Freeling led to they're not very cost effective for the applicant. Sometimes ranges very expensive depending on your use, and we saw that with the groomer, right? What was it, the Pet
Yeah.
Palace,
Mm-hmm.
where I don't know if they ever were approved or walked away because the idea of them having to pay near a six-figure number to meet their parking requirement, they might not make that number in a year. So, again, it's just food for thought for now about how we want to handle it. Giving the planning board the ability to vary from it, okay, but it's good luck. That's a tough road to sow, for a bunch of reasons. One, again, presidential nature, similarly situated buildings, so likely going to be a lot of the same application. Putting in the 200-foot radius again, if you touch municipal parking lot, might reduce your cost of a pull-up, or develop a different structure for your pull-up so it's not as cost prohibitive. Maybe reduce that number to entice or being able to fulfill some of the vacancies of the more popular spots that just can't ever meet a parking requirement, and the cost effectiveness of it all. So I bring it to this board for that discussion and thought. That discussion doesn't necessarily have to take place tonight, but we should look to consider, one of the things we vetted is a possible chart based on the use. Certain uses require less burdensome parking, so maybe that dollar figure should be less. If you're operating a takeout restaurant, probably shouldn't be held to the same standard as a sit-down restaurant as far as parking goes. Maybe something like that to help it'd be more cost-effective to get some of these storefronts that are vacant filled, simply because of parking, which we know we can't wave a magic wand and create parking. And so just food for thought for now. We're not going to touch the code yet until we have some further discussion, but the board should consider, and maybe, Sylvia, you could circulate if they don't have it, the prior resolution that set the PILOP. So at least you guys can see the actual number of what it costs and how the structure is. It's a fixed number.
Is it different in the C1 and C2?
There is some there is some differences in the resolution. Off the top of my head, I don't recall them. You feel free to weigh in, Stephen, if you know.
And is it also required, is pileup required if
You have to
a
meet your
prior-
parking burden.
if a CO has been issued to a prior tenant or establishment?
Again, common sense has to come into the process at some point, and that's where I like to start everything. And then if I could support it legally, great. If we take just the McDonald's building, for instance, it was approved as I'm assuming it had a CO for a fast food restaurant, or a restaurant type, and it had whatever parking it had or didn't have. If a similarly situated use comes in, the idea of not allowing that to take place based on the prior approval for a similarly situated business, again, seems to me counterproductive. What would you rather have, a parking problem or a vacancy problem? You know what I mean?
So the rates that were approved in 2020 C1, $6,500 to spot. C2, $4,000. The MW1 and NW2, $6,500.
Expensive. Expensive, but it might make sense for someone that, you know, the life of their project might yield $50 million. That's really not that, so I think we need to put some thought into possibly some type of sliding scale based on use as opposed to flat fees just based on zoning district, because it varies. Like the example I gave, should it's differently situated business be held to the same standard? Maybe not, maybe so. And again, the idea is to someday have a PIL-OP fund that has substantial enough money in it to support a possible parking grant one day and to be able to build maybe a parking structure at some point. Who knows? But to answer your question, Mayor, in reference to that, I would support if it's CO'd use and it's the same or like use. It depends, right? It depends whether you want to fill your PIL-OP coffers or you want a vacancy. I mean, I'm sure it's room for interpretation in there, and if not, we could change the code to create it. You know, so that's the kind of input I'm looking for about what makes sense, right? And again, ultimately, as the policymakers, you know, I think for a large-scale entity like a hospital, it might make sense to charge $6,500 for parking if they're expanding, because we know what that's going to yield to them. But for a groomer to pay $100,000 because they happen to be in the same zoning district, does that make plausible sense? Does that make common sense? Probably not. So maybe it shouldn't be so fixed, but we should give it some thought, and that's where I'll end that today. So just give it some thought. We'll revisit it. We'll do some further research. We'll ask for some further input from our planning department, but it's a good time to probably have that discussion to align with the presentation we saw today as far as vacancies and, you know, that type of thing, and the prospect of future development in and around the village and what that's going to look like as well. Secondly, we are poised to begin our road widening project on Willis Avenue. Our engineers has provided us an updated survey with the necessary right-of-way. We're poised to start sending letters to the affected neighbors that abut Willis Avenue on the corner to which we seek to widen or improve or fix the sight lines. So that's a good step in the right direction. There is at least one portion of Willis Avenue that is significantly occupied by various vehicles and other things that we'll be seeking the removal of immediately to determine if we just clean our right-of-way, is there even a need for the road widening based on where the property lines are situated and people overstepping those property lines along that corner. So it's a great first step. I applaud our engineer for getting that a fairly quick turnaround to getting us that information. So we're poised to begin that finally on Willis Avenue, which I know some of the neighbors have been calling for a long time. And lastly, we had an issue arise last week that I'd like to address with the board and get some direction, or at least notify. Our sign code. Our sign code has an appropriate section that says you can't put signs on right-of-ways, right? And so our DPW took upon action, because they routinely do this. They went and started removing signs from right-of-ways. We immediately started getting some calls at Village Hall based on the time of year and upcoming elections. Is that really a good idea to strictly enforce our sign code at this point, and whether or not we've ever done that in the past? Again, our code on private property is different than on right-of-ways. You can't put any structure or any sign upon our right-of-ways. But we somewhat allow it during certain times of year, or at least it's not strictly enforced, so we only respond to complaints, but then you only get complaints from people who know that if you complain, we'll take the sign down. And in this instance, the DPW was they removed signs on right-of-ways, and it wasn't one particular person or business or entity. They pulled a hodgepodge of signs and kept them at the DPW, and if there was a way to notify the owner of those signs, we did. So I'd just like to recommend that we deal with it for the next 30 days unless there is a sign that is a threat to the health and safety or on our right-of-way that's too large or blocking the views. Because for anyone that's currently running for office, to be accused of any type of malfeasance because you're currently sitting in the chair, whether it's trustee or yourself, Your Honor, it doesn't make sense when routinely for other portions of the year, when they're not village elections, it kind of goes unchecked. So I think we should just be cognizant of leveling the playing field and give everyone their fair chance, unless it becomes a site obstruction or significantly a proliferation or something like that. So food for thought. With your okay, I'll advise the clerk to guide DPW and our code accordingly, that at least for the next 30 days or so, unless it rises to a level, I think you get the gist of what I'm saying. So if there's any feedback or questions on that, I'd welcome it.
I'll comment because I'm not up for reelection.
Thank you.
Thank you. I agree. I think we
Okay.
should. I think it's helpful to the community to understand that an election's happening. It is a way to inform people, and usually they're gone the day after, if not, by that weekend.
The only issue we might have, and maybe we address it at some point in the code in the future, is after the election, how is someone running for office different than me trying to run my sprinkler business? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
we have to treat people equally, similarly situated people equally. So we might have cause to address or come up with better language to support what we're doing in the future. But I would agree with you that, as you know, I'm saying it, so you kind of agree with me,
Yeah.
that we're on the same page. But it could be problematic down the road, and so down the road, we might want to think about addressing it, the differentiation between, because we can't regulate the content of the sign. And if whether it's Dave Moran running for king or Dave Moran's sprinkler king, they should be treated the same.
Yeah, I think the way you can get around that is the time period.
But
Time,
again,
place, and manner.
you're still treating the content differently. So this content's appropriate now,
Yep.
but your content's not appropriate.
Well, I'm saying Sprinkler King is gonna go along for the ride. Is really what I'm saying.
I
And
get it.
then
I get it.
once
So
we're
we just have to
enforcing it
tread
again-
lightly, but I think it's important that the code is important because we shouldn't have people putting up, structures on our right of way because we know if you give an inch, some people might take a yard. But it's the standard.
So what is the right of way standard? Is if you're
Again,
so,
it depends on the filed map and the road. It's in most instances, I think it's safe between 7 and 13 feet, give or take. So there is a range, and you'll get people who don't know. And we had this just going back to the first one of the other topics I discussed, Willis Avenue. We had to determine first what that right of way was, where the property lines were properly situated, to see how and what we can do in order to make that road safer. So it's not some is black and white, you know what I mean, very clear. If you're driving in Brookhaven, if you're on 83 and there's a median, rest assured, that's a right-of-way. But the first 12 feet of your property, most people don't recognize or understand that you can't do anything on that property. You shouldn't be building, pillars to support your driveway lights or gates or fences on the village right-of-way either. The Constitution really doesn't get in the way of that like it does signs. But we should tread lightly, but we should also pay respect to the process, right? So I think we're on the same page, and we'll handle it accordingly and possibly revisit it off-season to try and tweak the language a little bit to make it.
sounds good to me.
Okay. And that's all I have.
Okay. Clerk Perillo.
Mayor, I'll try to be brief on my report. An update on the culvert cleanout RFP. The response time was extended by 10 days to the 29th of this month from the 19th. It was not a decision that was made lightly. It was discussed with first our grants administrator, Lisa Motto, to make sure that there were no repercussions or anything negative coming from that. And secondly, also discussed with our engineers, Hayduck, similar reasons. The reason for the extension is that it was asked for by one or two proposers. We have had a lot of questions and a lot of activity regarding this RFP. So we're happy about that. We're happy to say that. And in addition, it took a little bit of time to post videos and photos that are germane to responding. So that is extended to the 29th. We spoke about the required legal notices for the bonds. Tax bills will be mailed on the 30th. Taxes are payable without penalty between the 1st of June and the 1st of July. As a court update, May's court sessions will be on the 13th and 20th, and that's to account for the Memorial Day weekend. The JCAP projects are in process. Contractors have been contacted. Work will begin. So the court asks that everyone please pardons our appearance while work is happening. We're going to try to avoid disruption by having the majority of the work done on weekends. So initially, I had only 3 or 4 resolutions that needed to be taken out of process this evening and voted on during work session as a result of internal meetings with various department heads and the treasurer and our grants administrator. It was called to our attention that there are various time-sensitive matters that need to be voted on, so that means that we will have 13 resolutions that need to be voted on this evening. So with your permission, I'd like to start with resolution number 1, which is resolution number 1-51425, resolution ratifying the hiring of the attached seasonal part-time employees at the Port Jefferson Country Club Golf Pro Shop. And just to clarify, ratifying means that those people have already started working, so we're taking them out of process so that we are not deliberating on getting them paid. So, excuse me for that. May I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Comment? Early on, I've made this statement, and I've also made this statement to the people at the country club. We've got an awful lot of people up there working 1 day and 2 days. Going forward, I mean, I know he needs people, but I thought that the 3-shift rule was kind of sensible. I think last year we had 40-some-odd different W-2s. This brings us up to 32 already for this year. I think going forward, something has to be done about the situation.
There's also the consideration of the clerk's office that has to process this
Yeah.
paperwork.
Thank you, Mayor, if I may.
Yeah.
Mary spends an inordinate, my deputy clerk, Mary, spends an inordinate amount of time processing this paperwork, not just for our internal purposes, but also because reporting requirements changed. So she works together with Lynn,
Yeah.
and they spend a lot of time on this paperwork. Thank you, Mayor.
And so this document is dated May 2nd to the mayor and the board of trustees. We saw it for the first time as an attachment to the agenda.
Yes.
I would request that any requests that come in that do, put a burden on the clerk's office and the treasurer's office to process part-time, 1 day a week employees, come to the trustee liaison first.
Thank you. Noted.
So this handcuffs us, because they started already.
I think we should have a look at the employment policies and fringe benefits that might significantly reduce that number. That go along with working at the golf course. Maybe you won't get one person making a 6-hour shift if some of those benefits were remote.
So we'll discuss it in staff meeting.
For different levels, right? So hurdles that have to be hit.
They only kick in after.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
It goes further than the work of people down here. It goes to membership not knowing who the
Right.
people are that are working there.
Sure.
It goes to these kids, they don't know the members. They come and go like, the wind. To go through 40, I think it was 46 last year, I think is crazy.
When you're considering seasonal employment, you should have a maximum and minimum numbers that someone needs to work. It's a similar situation we had with code in our previous iteration of
Yeah,
code,
yeah.
where we had 40-some members, but some working only 3 hours a month. If you can't meet a minimum threshold, specifically in a golf course where consistency is important.
Yeah.
All in favor?
So these are people that already are working.
I don't think we have a choice.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Just points out that we may have a different
Reluctantly,
problem.
but yeah.
Okay, next.
Thank you. Next is resolution number 2, 51425, resolution ratifying the rehiring of Anthony Pipia as a seasonal part-time laborer at the Village of Port Jefferson Country Club at an hourly wage rate of $19 per hour effective May 1st, 2025. May I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
So Anthony already started too.
Yes.
All right, so this
Similar
is just our
concept.
internal
Yes.
process we have to rectify.
What
Yes.
would be the reason for the rehiring?
Probably seasonal employee.
Yeah.
He had
Seasonal
worked
employee.
before.
It
Whereas
wasn't,
before-
it wasn't working this year, and then,
No,
No.
okay,
his hourly rate, the hourly rate
Gotcha.
changes.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Resolution number 3, 51425, is a resolution involving, just by way of explanation, if I may, is a resolution involving our grants administrator, Lisa Motto. This is to make her whole regarding an invoice from the month of January. The invoice, we had no mechanism at the time to pay additional hours worked, so this is the process for that right now. So it's a resolution approving a one-time payment of $600 to Grants Administrator Lisa Motto to account for 6 additional hours worked and not paid during the month of January 2025. May I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We have resolution number 4, 51425, resolution ratifying the signing of the attached maintenance agreement submitted by Central Air Systems, Inc. for the provision of HVAC maintenance services at the Village of Port Jefferson Village Center. Just by way of explanation, this is a requirement of the permit required. Required for the camp.
Camps.
Right.
For the camp. So the director has asked that we please take this out of process. May I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Resolution number 5, 51425, is a resolution approving the attached lease quote for the lease of 3 new 2025 Ford Escape vehicles for the Code Enforcement Department, leased through the Enterprise Fleet Management Program via Sourcewell Contract Number 030122 EFM, and authorizing Mayor Shepro or the mayor's designee to execute the DocuSign lease agreement between the Village of Port Jefferson and Enterprise Fleet Management. May I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All in
Question?
favor?
We're okay with fees?
Yes, and this
Is
is,
this
Yes.
yes, and this reduces the cost actually by $200 a month.
perfect? I like that
I
answer.
demanded it.
That's a double I.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We have resolution number 6, 51425, which is a resolution approving the attached lease quote for the lease of 3 new zero-turn mowers for the Department of Public Works at a total cost of $37,102.92 over the 4-year lease term, resulting in a payment of $535.18 per month for each of the 48 months, and authorizing Mayor Shepero, the mayor's designee, to execute the lease agreement between the Village of Port Jefferson and Finch Turf. I worked with the treasurer, by way of explanation, I worked with the treasurer and Jarrett Hafner in order to make this happen in a timely manner, because the, the lease agreement would not have been ready from the leasor, if we approved this on the 28th, and the request from them was to have us rent in the time gap between those two events. And I worked with Jarrett to have him say that we were not going to do that. And so this is a result of that, and this will save us money in the long run, which the treasurer approved. So that having been said, may I have a motion?
Motion.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Resolution number 7, 51425, resolution authorizing the solicitation of a request for quotations for the provision of required dumpsters and the removal and disposal of trash at specified village-owned locations throughout the Village of Port Jefferson. May I have a motion?
Motion.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Resolution number 8, 51425 is a resolution authorizing the solicitation of a request for quotations for the performance of plumbing-related work as required on an as-needed basis at various village-owned locations throughout the Village of Port Jefferson. If I may say, this is sorely needed at this time. We need to go out and expand our search, and we'll do that not only through the newspaper, but through the New York State Contract Reporter, which has been an excellent source. May I have a motion?
Motion.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Resolution number 9, 51425 is a resolution authorizing the solicitation of a request for quotations for the cleaning of up to 50 specified drains and for sediment removal from those drains at various flood vulnerable village locations throughout the Village of Port Jefferson. May I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, this is just to clarify what this is. This is part of the grant for the August storms.
Right.
And it will be funded by FEMA to clean out our storm drains, up to 50 of them.
Up to 50.
Mm-hmm.
So, question then, because I was gonna ask how do we get to 50? The grant is for
Yes.
50? Okay. And then the other question is, at various flood vulnerable locations, is it the location itself or the location it could possibly impact? Because there's one storm drain that is on the street next to me. It's at the top of a steep hill. I would imagine it's like full, like truly full of sediment. And
Yeah.
if it were catching it, it wouldn't go down
Wouldn't-
the hill.
Yeah.
down the
So,
hill.
but it's flooding down the hill. It's not flooding at the top of the hill.
Got it.
So does that, something like that count?
I
based
think
on how
your
it's worded?
question sparks an idea, and so DPW is going through the village to determine which storm drains are most vulnerable and most needy. And I think we should kind of have, like, tell us about your storm drains kind of request, you know?
Like that.
Yeah, we can do that on social. But we don't start the work until after the new fiscal, right?
Yes.
But right now, we're moving forward with trying to get the company to book and we have a little bit of time to determine what storm drains are necessary. So especially us sitting around this table,
Yeah.
if we make observations and want to contribute to that, that's certainly a welcome participation.
But with the one at the top of the hill, not necessarily specifically that one, but do the ones on the higher elevation, are they included in this? Because I think, okay.
It's our choice.
Right.
Okay,
It
okay.
makes sense to
100%,
So the
we-
whole village is the flood.
We determine, yeah.
Okay, got it.
yeah.
Okay, just
Mhm.
making sure.
Mhm.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The major difference between resolutions number 10 and 11, just to clarify, is that 10 is for professional services, and 11 is for the actual work connected to those professional services. Okay, so just wanted to make that clear. Resolution number 10-51425 is a resolution approving the attached proposal submitted by P.W. Grosser for the provision of professional services in conjunction with FEMA grant number DR 4839NY for physical work related to erosion damage repairs and mitigation to the Old Homestead Road recharge basin at Oakwood Road and at the Sands Lane culvert, and authorizing Mayor Shepro to sign the proposal on behalf of the Village of Port Jefferson. May I have a motion?
Motion?
Second?
Are these both for 4839?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
all right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Again, this is the August storm.
There are different project numbers, Mayor,
Yes,
but
yeah.
that's the main number.
This is the August storm, yeah.
Mhm. Thank you. Resolution number 11-51425, resolution authorizing the solicitation of a request for proposals in conjunction with FEMA grant number DR 4839NY for physical work related to erosion damage repairs and mitigation to the Old Homestead Road recharge basin at Oakwood Road and at the Sands Lane culvert. May I have a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Just a typo.
Yep. Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Resolution number 12-51425 is a resolution approving the following. Whereas, as a condition of the final site development approval granted by the Village of Port Jefferson Planning Board on October 10th, 2024, the payment of a parkland fee is required for the Port Jefferson Commons development at 1601 to 1607 Main Street. Be it therefore resolved that a parkland fee of $1,900 per unit for each of the 53 units at 1601 to 1607 Main Street is hereby established. May I have a motion?
Motion?
I'll
Second?
second.
Just a question, is there any stipulation on how that money is, like, is there a parkland, there's a parkland fund, right? And do we, say, like, if you could just explain what the stipulations are then for that fund?
So you're,
Oh, sorry. Could you please explain the stipulations for the parkland fund? Thank you.
Yes, so the parkland fee is supposed to be for the development of parkland or for parks or for recreation type facilities. It is supposed to be collected and then moved over to a capital line. There is a parkland capital line in the capital fund as it is. So that is where, once the money's collected, it would be transferred over to capital. And then the board would have their discretion on how those funds are spent.
Okay. And is there,
Right, but for what park and what type of, so yeah.
gotcha. Thank you for that. And I just think this is that upper port by the train station. I know that there was a time where we put a pause on the 6-acre park grant, for the development grant for that. And I think it would be, great if we could use those funds to fill our 50% match for that grant, because it's in the neighborhood. Those fees paid by that developer and those residents would kind of get immediately returned to that neighborhood, and help revitalize up there. Also, with the safety concerns with folks camping in there, I know there's some back and forth on, well, if you build a park, it's just going to invite more people through. But I'm of the feeling that if you build a park, folks who are not trying to camp out there will be walking through, and it makes it an easier place to have more eyes on it and someone else to, call 911 or code enforcement to help that way.
What's the alternative to developing it?
What, the
Leaving it the
alternative
way
to
it is.
developing 6-acre park,
Yeah.
leaving it. Right?
yeah.
Yes,
Only
Yes.
two options,
Yeah.
yeah.
two options, yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Lastly, we have resolution number 13-51425, resolution authorizing Treasurer Gafka to perform attached budget transfer number 27, decreasing appropriations for line item A, 5110420, tree work by $15,000, and increasing appropriations for line item A, 5182200, street lighting equipment by $15,000 for the purchase and installation of a traffic signal light at the intersection of Stony Hill Road and High Street. May I have a motion?
Motion?
Second?
I'll second.
Second.
Any questions?
Yes, question.
Yes.
So this is just tree work. This does not in any way affect what we were discussing before with the tree committee or anything. This is,
No, this isn't for tree work. This is, I mean, I'm taking it from the tree work line, and this was discussed with the DPW staff to move over here, and there's still a significant amount of money left in the tree work line for the rest of the year that was not going to be able to be spent before May 31st. So the decision was made that this is how we can fund the needed light.
The traffic light, the new traffic light.
So this will not
We already
affect.
covered our obligation this year for tree.
Right, and the
Yeah.
Tree City is a calendar year, so, you know, if it's not spent before May and it's spent in June, it still applies the same.
got it.
I was gonna ask how much is left in the
Yeah.
account, but it's the end of the fiscal year
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
so.
There'll be 17,000 and change left in the
Okay.
account after this transfer.
And then we get more money in the next budget.
Correct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
No, you have more, young lady. What
That concludes my
what-
report.
What about the informational? Anything? Okay, you want to talk about the regatta real quick?
Yes.
And the fact that we're going to do a kickoff meeting with LKMA? Or no? Everybody's ready to go, aren't you? I could just stay here and talk all night.
Yeah, it's not the
Yeah,
third.
let's do that.
Yeah. It's
No,
not
just
the 30th.
on Sylvia's report, I do want to bring attention to this board that we executed the contract with McLean to start, and we'll have a kickoff meeting with McLean to start talking about the hazard mitigation grant project for flooding downtown. That's a very exciting prospect. And we are also going to now do a kickoff meeting with PW Grosser to start talking about the culvert and Sands Lane project. We'll have a kickoff meeting to talk about that. So just real quick, with the McLean project downtown, we are involving the key stakeholders in that kickoff, not in the kickoff meeting, but we'll involve the key stakeholders to that area to help inform the engineers on what they've seen, what they've experienced in real time in like one-on-one discussions. So that includes the fire department, that includes the school district, that includes the Barnum apartments and the Brook Apartments, and that includes Theater 3,
Theater 3.
Ruvo, all the businesses in Chandler Square, and probably Danfords as well. So this is going to be a very, very, very interesting and exciting project as we move forward with it. Just period, end of story. That's it. All right, Stephen. Oh, yeah.
Everybody's packing up.
Sustained.
Let's get ready for a long one. So, just quickly, the budget was adopted. Somebody had asked if it was uploaded to the website. It was. There needs to be a tweak to how it's being presented on the link and the page, but it is on the website currently under the adopted budgets link. So if you click that, it'll bring up the adopted budget for this year. Right now, we're working on getting it as a sub-page, like the monthly financials page, so that it'll list year after year after year, and it can be comparison for moving forward in perpetuity. The capital asset valuation had a discussion with them, who performed the evaluation and issued a draft report. There were some questions on the report. Have a discussion meeting tomorrow, tomorrow afternoon, late, with our auditors, our independent auditors, and with them to discuss, auditors have any comments, since they are the ones that issued the material weakness and the previous auditors have, to make sure that they are okay with how the report is presented. Would love to, hadn't had a chance to discuss this with you. Would love Trustee Ogrinski, if you want to come to the office tomorrow. I believe it's supposed to be at 2 o'clock. I might need to push it a little bit to 2:15 for a prior meeting, but we're going to have that conversation and hear what Ali Battaglia of RS Abrams has to say about what her thoughts are on this draft report. All signs are pointed this will be ready. We have the draft report, we just need to finalize it and then have it ready for presentation for the audit. So all signs are pointing to it being done, and I can't wait for it to be able to be shared with the board and to hear everybody's take on that report. Parking permits. We've approved over 2,500 permits since the middle of February, 2,200 owner permits and 300 renter permits. We're currently working with staff on making sure that everybody who is a resident is receiving their parking permit. And also, I believe the parking committee, and this will be, I guess, discussed at the meeting at the end of the month, submitted various recommendations for some parking-related activity. The country club, this is more towards Stan, question before. As of 5/1, there were 492 memberships sold, but since then I counted an additional 8, which got us around the 500 memberships. And the revenue was at $1.9 million as of 5/1. I established a procedure working with David Lessing of Lessings and Danielle from the membership office. Any catering inquiries that come in, how does that get presented to Lessings? How do they want it? Who do they want it to go to? After a couple discussions, we figured that out, and we've actually been able, in the last 2 weeks, there's been 5 inquiries that have come through the membership office, which have been forwarded to Lessings. So the membership office does get these inquiries, and now we have a procedure established.
Can we put a finder's fee on the?
I believe that'll come in the terms of the rent collected each month, hopefully.
Yes.
And working on other procedures with the membership office to start reporting financial details of what's going on up there. That'll be part of my report. So I'm working with Danielle and also trying to streamline some of the software and some of the how the work is being done and conducted up there to try and get things more moving in an easier, forward, cleaner fashion, so that everything can start being built on for the future and in perpetuity in terms of anything with a financial impact. Exciting, that's moving forward. The Finance Committee, I believe we're meeting May 22nd. So one of the, I had on my notes here, one of the things that we're going to discuss, and we talked about this briefly, is how do we want to, the last meeting the board approved the budget amendment to clean up all the capital. So I don't know if anybody had a chance to look at the report that was attached to this, but when you go through it, you're going to see a lot of zeros now, and the lines with positives, positive expense balances, are our current projects. The negative balances are the ones that have been previously overspent. So the balance in capital that we're short is around 1.3 million, and we're going to need to start figuring out how do we want to, in the future, fix that capital so it goes down to 0, and there is no overspending. The money in there is allocated, and it's a net 0 account again. So that is something the Budget and Finance Committee is going to take up. We're going to look at best practices from the state, how should fund balance be treated, and what potential effects it would have on credit rating depending on different scenarios on how we fix it, whether it be all at once, over a multi-year period, and ultimately it'll be up to the board to make that decision. But the Budget and Finance Committee will be taking a look at that so that it can be presented. And we'll have a path forward to finally having a very clean capital fund and no longer have any lingering issues from previous, the way it was handled previously. And just a quick update. The painting has been done in the future treasurer's office, and the carpet's being ordered, and that should be wrapped up. So we're going to start, hopefully by the end of May, there's going to be some turnaround in the office of.
Not so fast.
Huh?
Nothing.
Not so fast.
You say the mayor's office is almost
We
complete?
could slow it down. We could slow roll it.
No, it looks fantastic. It's going to be a very nice setting for you, Lynn and Michelle, and your future intern.
But you're not physically moving anything, right?
No.
No, okay.
Yeah.
By the time the carpet's done, hopefully I'll be fine.
Okay.
We're hoping. But unless anybody has any other questions, I'll wrap it up there.
Yeah, I just have one thing to add to the Budget and Finance Committee piece. So we've also been talking about the need, now that we know what our financial position is and some of the planning and forecasting that we need to do to both eliminate the capital deficit and build up a contingency fund. You know, I've asked the group to also start thinking about how do we forecast. So I've already been speaking to Andy about, you know, how do we understand the tax rolls better? How do we forecast? So for example, we have to assume that, you know, if one of the hospitals owns a parcel, we can't count on that tax revenue in perpetuity. So we need to do some revenue forecasting in addition to what we're trying to do relative to building up the capital fund or getting it to zero, net zero.
I think that's smart. Okay, I guess that's it, right? Anything else?
Motion.
About what?
Second.
At 9:10.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Aye.
Aye. We all voted. Okay. Okay, motion carries.